You've made the statement it can be amended, either increase or decrease. When can it not be amended?
After the money's spent.
No, there's another period of time that has got to be determined here someplace in relation to the setting of the tax rate.
The tax rate will have to...
You tell me when this is.
August, the last day of August, we have to certify the tax rate to the county auditor.
If we couldn't amend it, we could box ourselves in a position where we would be planning to spend more money than our charter limitations. So we have to be able to amend it. I'd be interested in having a city attorney stake his reputation as a CPA and auditor. I would hesitate.
We've done it the last 5 years.
I would hesitate to answer the mayor's question at this time because it's not as clear to me as it is to my deputy, Fred Lawrence. With respect to the power of this council to amend the appropriation ordinance now before you,
I think maybe we ought to find that out, though, because I think the whole question is you're right, at what time can we still make an amendment, say when the assessor comes out, and then we want to see what day is it going to be a 10 cent.
That doesn't decrease it.
What Jack is
Inappropriate.
what Jack is saying, he wants to know when he's pre-committed, right?
I want to know, say, if based on not changing the budget, we get the increase in the assessed valuation, and it requires, say, a 10-cent increase in the tax rate. We want to decide to make it 5. Do we still have the opportunity to cut our budget to bring it down to a 5 cent as opposed to a 10 cent?
Yes, sir. Clerk, I will make a statement that all of the things that the various departments really wanted to get done will be well committed and out the door, and the things that they're not too enthusiastic about will be waiting there to be cut.
So what? Then you run any business that way.
We should notice.
Let me,
2 minutes after 10. Okay. This guy comes out from out of town. He's all efficiency. Planned unit development. Various citizens, different citizens who might be interested, and also departments of the city, and of course the city council. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Byron White, who's from the Mayor's Finance Committee. He has a presentation to be made. So, Byron.
Yes, Your Honor, and members of the council, you have before you a mimeograph sheet which comprises...
Wait, excuse me. I don't have it. Here.
They're right there.
Where is it?
There's one.
You have one on it?
Right there. Yeah, I got one.
Where's one?
This comprises 3 suggested changes which will be included in our forthcoming report of the Committee on Finance, which is to be presented to you on July the 6th. But the timeliness of this, we felt it would be appropriate to present these to you now. They comprise 3 of our suggestions which will require charter amendments if they are to be given effect, and they're for your consideration. The purpose of these changes are to provide for what we consider would be more efficient and economical transactions to conform with sound business principles. The first 2 have to do with purchases and contracts that the city enters into. To cover the first one, as you know, right now the city charter provides that all purchases which do not exceed $1,000 may be made by the purchasing agent upon the request of the department. And it provides further that any purchases in excess of $1,000 must be authorized by the city council. We would propose to amend the charter to authorize that the purchasing agent negotiate these orders for materials up to $5,000. That would be an increase from $1,000 to $5,000 without formal bidding or council approval.
Excuse me, Byron. How long has Section 15 been in existence? Since 1931?
Yes, it was in our original...
You mean Section 35?
I mean 35. Talking about Ed Butler's Amendment 15. Yes, 35. 1958, effective 1959. As amended in 1958. Was this in this division in the 1931 charter?
It's my understanding it was. There were amendments in that section, but the $1,000.
Byron?
Yes.
I think that's right. We had this out once before. This was recommended by the original Charter Review Committee, I think. It was on the ballot. Go up to 5,000.
But something else hits me on this, and it's one of my favorites that always comes forward. We run into a few things where there just is no bidding. One supplier, like motorcycles, isn't this the place to start cleaning that sort of thing up? For example, there's only one bidder comes in. We know there's only going to be one bidder. At that point, there should be a provision where the city manager can negotiate. This is, we've checked this out. This is done in other cities.
Because there's only one bid doesn't mean there's only one bidder. And I think that if you suddenly determine that who is going to decide there's only one bidder, there's more than one qualified person eligible to bid. Only one sees fit to bid. We have to use this particular kind of motorcycle. It's the only one available. And if we suddenly change our procedure, and then we have it on the docket that somebody is a low bidder on motorcycles, this guy out here says, hey, I'd like to have bid on that. And unless we open it up every single time and go through this procedure, and agreeable it appears to be unnecessary, but...
Well, all I'm saying on the thing, Ivor, is they always have to go out to bid. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, unless there is only one bidder. It should go out to bid, but when it only comes in with one bidder.
How do you want to change the charter to read then? What do you want to do?
Well, do you have to accept the lowest bid when there's only one bidder, or when there's only one bidder, then the manager can go into negotiation?
We want the police department.
Some of the other cities do this. It does happen. It has been checked out. It is very successful.
You mean they buy motorcycles cheaper than we do?
They buy products that come in with a single bid for less money than we do, yes.
Well, anyway, would you say...
Walter Hahn one day,
yes,
it was very good.
Mr. Shire, would you say what you're talking about directly brings in this number one? If not, then...
Well, I think this is the area. When you make a charter change, you change a section at a time, and you're going to put one section and one subject on each ballot proposition. And if that is the section of the charter that it would involve, and where that consideration would be put in there, now is the time to talk about it.
All right, well, we have 3 items here. We can bring that up. Why don't we finish this one here?
Okay. Now, the second one is very similar to the first, except that it concerns contracts for construction rather than purchases. And effectively, the present law is that the city manager may enter into contracts for construction, reconstruction, etc., if they do not exceed the cost of 1,000. That's the present law. And further, if they are over 1,000, they must be authorized by the city council, and further, if they're over 2,500, they must have formal bid. Our recommendation would be that the city manager be authorized to negotiate and enter into contracts up to 5,000 for construction or repairs without the formal bidding procedures or council approval. Just to discuss the reasons for these two, we feel there's been a certain amount of inflation here since originally, although certainly not the difference between 1,000 and 5,000. Further, these low maximums were, I think, traditionally set in before we had more professional type city managers and purchasing agents, maybe as a protection for forms of government, which I think there is more protection now than there was. Further, our people, in a way, the professional men who do this are certainly well trained and businesslike, and it seems to us that these low maximums here tend to bring about too much detail that's required by the councilman, and doesn't really set you people free to do the more basic and fundamental and important things, and therefore we recommend these 2 changes.
I think 1 and 2, I like them both. I think they're good recommendations. I wonder if it would be possible to combine the 2 into one proposition. They are similar, they accomplish the same, the principle is the same.
2 sections.
2 sections, so they should be same.
Then to continue, the third recommendation, as you know right now, Section 95 of the Charter provides that the purchase orders issued other than the low bidder for articles produced or regularly stored in San Diego grant a differential not to exceed 5% of the bid of the lowest responsible bidder. In effect, the San Diego businessman gets a 5% break in competition over others. Now, our Finance Committee recommends deletion of this section. The purpose of this is to give our city purchases the most economical advantage. We feel that our businessmen can compete with others. We feel that they are in a position to stand on their own feet. Actually, other factors being equal, certainly we should, I think all agree, we should try San Diego first, but we feel that the most businesslike and sound principle would be to eliminate this differential.
Now, when we talk about San Diego, this refers to the county or the city? On the 5%, I don't remember.
Well, it says articles produced or regularly stored in San Diego. I take it that means the
City or county.
City or county.
City or county. Well, on occasions, a local merchant has been advantaged to this, but again, too, whether the city has been or not.
These were all Charter Review Committee recommendations, if I recall right, weren't they?
Number 3 was.
This one was, and it was
Number
on the
3 was.
ballot last year, and I think number 1 was also.
And numbers,
Yeah.
they look familiar.
They were around 2 years ago, weren't they?
The amounts are slightly different, I think, in 1 and 2.
Oh,
It was 2,500 at the Charter Review Committee.
yeah.
Any question in council on this?
I think they're all good.
I think they're all good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Others on the zoo or anything else? Well, at the time our 3 recommendations are as presented, and our complete report won't be out till July the 6th. I'm serious when I say that, because I read in the paper that there was some proposal concerning the zoo, and which requires a charter change. Now, are you going to present further changes for this coming election? Well, I think it's entirely possible that very early there may be more than these 3, and we realize that the time element is important. Do you have the schedule on, or do we have
I've got
our own schedule?
I've got a,
Yes,
I've got a schedule here, and it says today is the last practical date.
Well, let's have the clerk give us the schedule on it.
Here it is. It's the clerk's schedule.
July the 20th is the last date that you gentlemen may, with final form, determine what's going to go on the September 21st ballot. Which means that you have to allow the city attorney some time to draft on how much time he needs ahead of July the 20th, but it has to be finalized on the 20th.
In legal form. Now, what about the argument?
The
Can be
arguments
later.
will call for the arguments immediately thereafter. They close on July the 30th.
Have we in the past had hearings on things that we were deciding to put on the ballot?
Up to
What
the
happens
council
is
again.
there's an ordinance which calls the election, which you must adopt, and at that time, if anyone has any argument, it can be happened.
At that time, we have at that time the possibility to amend or to remove propositions. That's right. That's what
We
we
stayed
did.
pretty loose on this.
That's what we did last year.
That's July the 20th.
All right.
That's right. Okay. Thank
you
you,
very much.
Cyrus.
I would move that the attorney be directed to put items 1, 2, and 3 recommended by the Finance Committee in
Legal form.
suitable language for the ballot.
Clear, concise.
All right. Now, just for a point of information, Ivor, this means that when it comes back to us, then we will finalize it as to decide whether it's going to go on or not.
That's right.
Okay.
We're going to put them in their proper perspective and priority to bring them about before we're through with their presentations. Maybe some of these should be moved up to November or something like
Okay.
that.
All right.
That's
Fine. Okay. I hear a second to the motion.
One second.
Move a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. I'd like to call Tom Fletcher.
Council asked the manager to come in with any suggested amendments. I told various departments on it. We came up with, as a matter of fact, exactly the same 3 that Mr. White has just presented to you. So that we coincidence, and we concur in that recommendation. We did discuss with purchasing department this question that Mr. Scheidler has raised a number of times about when you have single bids. The purchasing agent does not feel that you would gain a great deal, frankly, by making the amendment in the charter in relation to single bids. He points out that in his experience, you have about 10 of these a year on the docket. which are single bid. And he is a little concerned, and I think Mr. Kirby mentioned, that although you may have a single supply or a single make, you may have more than one dealer. My opinion on it can be either put on or not. If it is put on, the charter change and to permit where you have single items, you do not have to formally bid. I would assume that administratively we could bid if we wanted to. And I think that would be the one if you're going to put this on, I would want that added into it, so that it doesn't force us to not bid if we determine there's only one supplier, that we can if we want to. Make it permissive rather than mandatory.
What section of charter is involved in that, do your records show?
I have no assistance.
I don't follow
Section 35.
Well, I thought that's what it would be, and that's why I mentioned it on the others.
Section 35.
I think if there's justification, now's the time to consider it. Be ashamed to put it in, get it on the ballot and vote on it, and then after the election's over, say, gee, we should have done it. Let's talk about it now, and if we want to, fine, or let's consider it, but I think it'll either come up or not. It'll come up from the manager's office as a consideration and see what happens.
Well, we're talking about charter amendments. I wonder, Marty, if you might get us some charters.
Well, I might say this would be an addition. This is not deleting or altering language. The one we're talking now in terms of single source supply. The suggested language that John Mattis, is that when upon investigation by the purchasing agent it has been determined that there is a single source for items required for the city which exceed the amount of $5,000. And it has been determined by the purchasing agent or city manager that the specific item, that's read either way, you can put it in either way if you want to, that the specific item is required by a department of the city to properly perform its function. The city manager, after receiving a quotation from a single source, may present the item to the council for approval without resort to formal specification or advertising for bids. The key word there is may. In other words, it is not shall. That the manager can use his discretion as to whether or not it does or does not use bidding, even though he knows that there's only one source. Because one of the things we're trying to do, for example, on the motorcycles, is to get some of these dealers to bid against each other, and they won't do it. We'd like to see them do it.
Well, if you're allowed to negotiate, for example, one fellow always bids, why there's nothing to stop you from sending some agent somewhere, LeMay, Seldon or something, go out and make a deal for 10 motorcycles, and if it happens to undercut the other dealer, he's going to be jumping the next year. That's the way they do it for me. I like to see the two-way street.
Did you get run over by a motorcycle when you were a kid or something?
No, but my customers come in and whiplash me all over the lot, and I like to see them working in every direction.
We've already taken out in 62 probably the biggest anomaly we had, and that was the requirement to bid for electrical energy. And that was taken care of in a charter change in 1962.
You have this also on Caterpillar tractor parts, Xerox equipment, that sort of thing, and especially when you're getting into data computing and things of this type, you're going to have more and more specialized equipment where once you start up the system, you're hooked.
Is that what you're proposing then, Joe?
Well, as I said, very frankly, we don't feel very strongly either way on this thing, because it's about 10 a year. But if it is to be considered by the council, then we would suggest this language, which is permissive rather than mandatory.
Well, don't we just believe in one thing? We either believe in competition or we don't. And anything that will create competition is good for the city. Anything that cuts out competition is bad.
I think your number 3 that was recommended by the Finance Committee may take care of the situation, because this would then allow you to go to some motorcycle dealer, let's say in Los Angeles or San Francisco.
We don't give local bidders preference on motorcycles, do we?
Any bidder.
You do?
The law is if they regularly stock the material in San Diego County.
And they regularly stock motorcycles, and therefore if you want out of the county, there'd be a 5% preference.
All right. Okay, now how many, just using this as an example, how many dealers are there in San Diego, this particular type of equipment? There might be 5 or 6, and if there's enough power where they hold together, then it may be from the factory.
It is from the factory.
All right, so if it's from the factory, then you're going to have the same situation in Los Angeles as anyone else, so that would repeat that.
On the motorcycle, it's from the factory.
a curious thing, commentary here, that with respect to dealing on motorcycles and the like, you get somewhat exercised, and yet you can spend $700,000 in a consulting contract without a competitive bid. Well, what's the
It's
desire?
an intangible product.
Because it's a professional thing, it's like dealing with an attorney, you just can't get anywhere.
Yeah, no. What's the desire of the council on that? Well, we can come back to that unless we talk to one
let's hear some more of them, see how it is.
All right,
The only other one the manager has, and it's not mine, I think it's either Ed's or Fred's, there's been some discussion of an amendment relative to short-term borrowing, and which apparently is quite important.
Is that it? Yes. This was amended and effective in 1963. You better speak on this one, Fred.
That's the last one here.
This relates to section 92 of the charter, borrowing money on short-term notes. We have never exercised the opportunity to finance interim under section 92 because we've used 93, which is the temporary borrowing of treasurer's funds. The Mayor's Committee on Municipal Finance recommended that we go to the normal financial institutions on tax anticipation notes rather than borrowing monies from treasurer's funds, because we would be able to extend the time of treasury investments of funds at a higher rate of interest than we would have to pay to go out to financial institutions. When you look at section 92 on borrowing funds, we find that there are some reasons why it would not be advantageous under this basis. The suggested changes in section 92 would relate to the authorization by council by resolution rather than by ordinance, because it would take a 31-day ordinance under the charter. And this is also the provision that's in the government code, which authorizes cities to authorize short-term borrowing by resolution. The provision is also proposed to be changed where the bonds, notes, or registered warrants on the treasurer issued in anticipation of the collection of taxes in any fiscal year may be issued during each fiscal year, rather than shall be issued only during the first 4 months or necessary periods of the fiscal year. The problem of when the money may be issued may require us to issue a great deal of bonds in order to anticipate the need further along, and that we need the tax anticipation notes later in December, January, or before the second installment of taxes. Liberty to borrow as needed on tax anticipation. And the problem of first repaid from first taxes makes it so that as soon as we receive taxes, we must immediately repay these notes, and then we still don't have any more money. We're still just as lean, and so it's to be paid from taxes received, but not necessarily the first taxes received. From the financial institution, they are interested in a schedule of notes falling due at a given time, and then they have dependency upon the interest that they're going to earn over a 4-month period or a 6-month period, rather than to have notes outstanding and we must pay back a portion of those notes as taxes come in.
Fred, why do you show by resolution instead of ordinance?
It's going to take 31 days for the ordinance to be effective. We would not borrow until 31 days after we knew the need.
When does the resolution take effect?
Immediately.
Well, if the resolution takes effect immediately, how is it referendable?
It would not be referendable.
Depends upon whether it's legislative action or not. This
Well,
kind
if
of
this resolution is not subject to the referendum, why is the general plan resolution?
because the resolution adopting the plan was held by the Second District Court of Appeal in January of 1965 in a case arising in the city of Compton to be a legislative act, not a ministerial or executive act. And even though the legislative act was embodied in a resolution, the form of the legislative act isn't controlling as to the referendum. So, the resolution was subject to the referendum.
Would this resolution be subject to the referendum? And if not, why does it differ?
We would, without having thought about that one deeply, I would
You
say
got
that
it these days.
that this resolution here isn't a legislative act, that this is an executive or a ministerial act, and not legislative in character, and accordingly it would not be subject to the referendum. But what with the way courts go these days, it's pretty hard to predict. The better educated guess is it would not be subject to a referendum.
Better educated guess is the stupid Supreme Court or something.
The fact is, if it took effect immediately, the money would have been borrowed and the referendum wouldn't have been able to reach anything anyway.
That's my same point. I'm jumping away to another subject because that's where I brought it up, was that if the resolution takes effect immediately and we adopt the general plan by a resolution, then the general plan should take effect immediately.
It did, but the general plan, this is the curious thing of that court decision, the general plan is an executory document in and of itself. It took no action in and of itself. It does nothing, which raises, you'll recall, these difficult legal questions. What happens when a general plan is hit by a referendum? It's like a wet gunpowder. We don't see much of a flash.
Kind of a dull thud.
Okay.
I was going to say there is a provision in the government code that's available to cities and including charter cities, relative to borrowing on tax anticipation notes during a fiscal year. Because our charter does have specific language in here as to the way in which the city of San Diego borrows on short-term notes, it is presumed to be primary. In other words, we cannot avail ourselves of the government code section. What this does is bring our charter somewhat in line with the general government code section as far as the basis for issuing the notes by resolution, and that it may be as during the fiscal year when needed, not necessarily the month. Furthermore, the government code is a little bit more liberal. It says in anticipation of revenues from any source. We believe that this matter of having tax anticipation revenues ties us down a little bit more, that we are going to be looking solely to the revenues from taxes for the repayment of these rather than the total revenues. Now, we could go as far as to include the whole gamut of anticipated revenues or any revenues during the year as security for the notes. However, whether or not this would be generally acceptable.
If we repeal the whole section pertains to short-term borrowing, then the government code would supersede, correct? And we would have this in effect.
You would have it in accordance with the government code, subject to changes at the state legislature level.
So actually, this is bringing us in line with the government code, but it will be stuck in the charter.
Not completely in line, but it's
in this area, though,
along the lines of what we saw were advantages in the government code as being able to operate efficiently under the recommendations of the Mayor's Committee.
Fred, is it a limiting factor here at the first sentence that one of the conditions is if there is not sufficient cash reserve to meet current obligations? What if there is sufficient reserve to meet current obligations? Would there be any advantage in still borrowing?
No, I think this is one of the factors the council would want to satisfy in adopting such a resolution, that there was a need for tax anticipation notes. We would not want to recommend issuing tax anticipation notes unless there was a need, and I think the council would want to make sure that it's not done.
Let's look at it from a financial standpoint. Say we had sufficient cash reserved to meet the current obligations, and we wanted to pay them, and we wanted to invest that money in a bank or on a return that would bring 4% and borrow on the short term at 3.5%.
Borrow less than that.
We're speculating on public funds then.
We're not speculating.
What he's doing, he's talking about the investment of surplus cash.
I say invest surplus cash if we can borrow it cheaper. To me, it's more economical, even if you've got it.
That was a recommendation of the Finance Committee.
Yeah, that was the recommendation.
Well, then this the first sentence here seems to be would eliminate that. If there is not sufficient cash reserve to meet the current obligation, I say, and I think it was the intention of the Finance Committee, was that even if we've got all the money, a bundle of money to meet all of our obligations, let's put that in an investment that'll bring us a higher rate of return than what we can borrow in it. It's that simple. And I don't see the speculative. I see.
Would this hurt it?
Why not just strike
what's right? This would be self-limiting. If there's enough cash reserve, you don't go out on the
Well,
on the notes.
suppose you eliminated prior to notes.
Thank you.
On the third line, you've got bonds or notes. Or just start there, bonds or notes may be issued in anticipation. Start where it says bonds. And scratch all that before it.
Are we endangering anything?
Well,
What happens when that comes out?
We'd have to look at this thing.
I
You
would,
want to...
I would say that your question might be is the general acceptance to the general public as to whether they're willing to accept the charter change then as to being completely liberal or only when needed.
Well, the only two things it accomplishes. One, you don't have to have as large a reserves, because you'd have to have reserves to take you over these humps. And we did have interfund borrowing that we created by a charter change not too long ago. The other one is generating revenue by getting into the financing business, borrowing the money cheap and letting it out high. And that was the recommendation. Was it?
Not,
Is that the intent or isn't it?
this is not the intent of this proposed draft to get into the financing business.
Is it a fringe
borrowing money and
benefit?
loaning money.
Yeah,
The intent of this is to operate the city governmental needs in a logical, business-like basis, being able to borrow on tax anticipation.
Well, first of all, we had a recommendation of the finance group there. And Jack brought out a point. Ed, now, through the recommendation of the Mayor's Finance Committee and what Jack brought out, are we going to have some conflict here? Yeah, it raises the other question, the extent to which a charter amendment is required to effectuate the recommendations of that Finance Committee to engage in this borrowing cheap and lending high to generate revenue and smartly use the cash of the city. I'm not prepared to answer that one right now. I was going to ask Tolson the extent to which charter amendments were considered to implement this borrowing lending concept to the Mayor's Finance Committee.
Well, initially it was hoped it could be done without a charter, but if a charter is necessary, I think they were thinking in terms of being able to put money in long-term investments so that you could then borrow in short-term, and I would agree that the first phrase here might very well prevent that. And if you deleted that and started with bonds, you would go ahead and put your money in long-term and then borrow on short-term. But then the question would be that you actually had the money, and should you take it out of your investment and turn it into liquid assets?
I think the thing to remember here is the reason for this recommendation is that up until 2 years ago when there was a charter amendment, we could not borrow from even though we had cash in other funds. The general fund could not borrow from water fund, sewer fund, trust funds, and so on. So we amended the charter a couple of years ago to, rather than issuing tax anticipation notes, we could borrow from this other money. Now, the Finance Committee came up with a recommendation, well, rather than borrow from those funds which are getting 4% interest, there's been a ruling now that tax anticipation warrants will only carry about a 2% interest, so that you make money by borrowing and not taking the money out of these other funds. Now, it wasn't whether you invested your general fund money. It was the investment of these other funds, rather than taking those, keep those invested at 4%, and borrowing for the general fund on tax anticipation.
Or getting rid of your money by paying off the Congress retirement fund at 4 or 5%. Get it down.
Let me ask this. How many millions of dollars do we have in 1913 and 1911 acts each year that are not paid off in cash, that are paid over the 10-year period at a 6% return? Could we borrow?
We don't have any of those.
We don't have any.
No.
That's handled outside.
Yes, sir.
We could buy some, though.
Okay, well, I think the council might have to decide whether this concept of borrowing we want.
Well, I think we
Jack
ought to
brought out a point here that
I think we ought to refer this to the attorney, to the finance committee, and to Fred to get together and see whether or not they can come up with what they feel is the best approach, and then if they can't, then come back individually.
we can advise you. I'm not prepared to tell you the implications of a lot of this stuff. All right,
Who
why don't you
prepared
move
these
this,
things?
Jack?
For example, this copy, who prepared this?
I worked, and Les Sornes and I worked, and Gordon Seeley worked with Ed Miller, the attorney's office, in drafting this particular suggested change.
Yeah, well, Jack brought up a practical aspect that
I move that
They did.
we refer this to the city attorney to coordinate with the finance committee and with Fred on coming back with the draft form of this revision to go on the if there's a minority report when it comes back, we can hear the minority report.
to conclude a consideration of this
investment process.
Yeah, move, I hear second? Hear a second on the motion? Move second. Refer to attorney, the controller, and finance committee. Further report back. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary?
Can the city endorse the
All right.
1911 act, provide bonds? Yeah.
How about the city retirement
Why
fund?
can't we?
Legal prohibition of the government code.
The government code. So if we put it in the charter, we could?
Okay, anything else from the...
Point.
Well, I'm
This might
sorry.
be a consideration.
How about the city retirement fund?
As an attorney, I couldn't have to.
Fred, as a member of the board on the city retirement fund, what would stop the city retirement fund from getting the 6% interest on the return on investment on 1911 Act as opposed to the 5% that they're getting now from the city on the,
They have considered it, but there is a lot of factors involved in the amount of money they have to invest in this, and you want a small block, which they are 240. Some are combinations, it's complicated to handle, so they have considered it.
You have to bid on them too, I guess.
Well, let's go on to further proposals. Fletcher, you got anything?
I have no more, right? The attorney has none.
All right, Mr. Attorney?
We have at least a set of four more. The first one before you is this multi-purpose stadium. I distributed to you a letter dated July 1, talking about the vote on this. You got two alternatives. The first alternative is a binding one, in the sense that it's one that has legal effect. The second one doesn't. The first alternative won't achieve the objectives of the manager, as I understand them, which is to proceed immediately with the formation of a joint powers agreement.
See, the practical problem we have is if we don't create the joint powers agency immediately, within the next few weeks, if you wait until the 21st of September and then create the joint powers agency, you will not have time to have issued the bonds, assuming a favorable vote, in order to get the money for the money you need as early as November for site preparation. So that if it is our desire to keep going on this thing and have it done by August, you really have to create the joint powers agency almost immediately. In order to get all the legal work out of the way, everything ready to go, so that you get a favorable vote in September, then all the work's been done relative to issuing the bonds and go right ahead with the project on time. So I would recommend the alternate suggestion of the attorney. Rather than put the creation of the agency on the ballot, you create the agency and simply ratify, in effect, the creation of the agency by the vote.
What's stopping you from just going ahead and doing this now?
There's nothing. As a matter of fact, proceeding. The meeting was held yesterday, staff level, and I think there will be a request very shortly for a joint meeting of the council and the board of supervisors relative to the creation of the agency. The attorneys, both Bert McLeese and Ed Butler, are working relative to language and going right ahead under the council's direction.
Well, I don't get item number 1. Rather outspoken the last time that the one reason why that we could discuss going to a vote, one of the recommendations of the finance committee was when we obligate the city for some capital improvements for years to come. But here we've got site location, land acquisitions, and some of these other things. Now I don't want to get into the point where I'm trapped in the future when I want to make the decision on something, and because it's controversial and not involving capital funds, that we start hollering, put it to an election. Now, I think 1 is broad enough that it may put us in that position. If I read it right, Ed, on the site location being one of the methods.
I said such ordinance could relate to several subjects, such as site location, method of financing, and land acquisition costs. We think you could select one of these areas, incorporate the problem, Jack. This is an extremely difficult legal field. Under our charter, legislative powers are vested in the city council, subject to the powers reserved to the people by the Constitution of the state and the charter. The legislative powers reserved to the people are the initiative and the referendum. The legal question presented is, in the area of legislative action, the extent to which you, as a legislative body, may, on your own, initiate a matter or create a referendum matter. And the problem that the courts have in this area is just this difficulty, is trying to create a ballot proposition which will be legal and subsisting rather than purely advisory in character. Now, looking at site location, there are cases that say the location of the site of a courthouse is not a legislative act. These are cases that say that when a board of supervisors selected a place for a county courthouse, the selection was not subject to the referendum. If it's not subject to referendum, it's not a legislative act. So, site location you can probably use. Method of financing raises very serious policy difficulties. The classical way that you finance long-term obligations in California through general obligation bonds with a 66 2/3% revenue bonds with a majority vote. Now, as soon as you adopt a policy or you begin to say that sale, lease back, purchase, lease back, non-profit corporations, joint powers, agencies, and others, all of which techniques do not require a vote of the people, but do have a long-term financing obligation of the city. When you adopt a policy that says we won't go into any of these without a vote, then, the courts say, you may be acting in derogation of the obligation to kick this thing to bond. And this area gets very fuzzy and very shady. And we're, without knowing, because there aren't any cases on it, but reasoning from analogies, we think you might find yourself making admissions against interest that every time you go a sale-purchase arrangement, that you kick it to a majority vote, but you're really saying it's in derogation or it's an avoidance or evasion of the bond requirement.
Somebody has to test this in court.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah, but pioneers get scalped, Harry.
Yeah. I'll address my next question to the headless horseman. Ed, on this, even if we do require a lend-lease or a lease-back or a non-profit corporation to a vote of the people, that does not mean, then, still, that that vote is binding. So you're really not bypassing the general obligation or the revenue bonding approach. You're saying this is the method that we're going to use. We have every legal right in the world to go ahead and use it. And then they say, well, 50% of us or 51% of us say, no, we don't like that method. We still can legally go right ahead and do that, can't we?
We think you can, but that kind of a ballot that kind of a proposition on a ballot is susceptible of being stricken from the ballot. There's language in Attorney General's opinion that it's a legal nullity of no force or effect. There are cases from out of the state that say you can strike the thing from the ballot before it ever gets to the vote. But more importantly, it's in derogation of this legislative powers concept which resides in you, and it might slop over and affect the financing. We're not clear on this thing. As I say, it isn't done this way.
So a lot of problems.
What would happen if
What would happen if we did?
What would happen if we did like the manager wants to do, and go ahead and pass, adopt an ordinance establishing a joint powers agreement, and then not put that on the ballot, but put what you recommend that would have something, and this would, in effect, we could dissolve the joint powers agreement if we didn't have all this other authorization.
When you say ordinance, you could, and you would need to pass a resolution authorizing the manager to enter into a joint powers agreement. Originally, the resolution would be sufficient, we think.
In other words, could we take the necessary steps now to authorize the manager to proceed in the formation of a joint powers agreement, and then put something on the ballot that would be legal and agreeable to...
Well, that's number two. That's number two, I guess. And you can go ahead and create the joint powers agency now, and then put this advisory proposition to the ballot. And the advisory proposition has no legal force or effect, but will give you this, well, this, how the people feel about it. I'll ask you a question. Apparently it's going to take so many ordinances to be passed to implement this stadium thing. Now, we're just spinning our wheels. If we pass an ordinance that is referendable, that can be hit, and we couldn't get it on the September ballot. In short, it would have to come up in November, which might delay the project for a month or two. I would think all of the ordinances that are necessary to be adopted to implement this thing should be adopted so that the referendable period would run, and that then they could go on the September election. Otherwise, we're pretty much spinning our wheels on this thing.
Why don't we do this? We're going to have another couple of sessions meeting on this thing, and we just got this now, and there's two alternatives, and I'd like to ask some questions on this stuff, and why don't we just go on to some of the other things, hold these till next Tuesday when we meet again on them, and in the meantime, we get some other individual questions asked and answered.
Is it all right, so the council previously has authorized me to go ahead and investigate the creation of joint powers agency, which I am doing. I assume that it's all right with the council to continue in that vein.
Have you got it formed yet?
Yes.
Sure, I would say continue, unless there are objections to that. That's a 1/4% interest. That's what we instructed you. Go ahead. Anything else in the attorney's office? He's passing around the general plan ballot language, which you can look at your convenience. I don't suppose you need to discuss it now.
We discussed the general plan by our document, resolutions, because this is something that stays with us a while, is subject possibly to the referendum. What if we revoke the general plan? What would we end up with, and then just use it as a guide? But what is it? It's just as a guide, right?
Well, resolution. No, I can't say that it's just a guide, Jack. The general plan has more teeth in it than just a bland guide. It has to put into effect things which the court said were legislative in character.
Well, it would mean something to future council too as well.
Oh.
Great deal.
Well, sure.
But my idea is state.
Resolution can change like...
Yeah, I know.
I had thought that we'd had a resolution.
Well, I was thinking possibly if we revoked the resolution adopting general plan and then put it to, trying to avoid mainly the question of the expense involved in the distribution of the general plan, and if there is another method by which we can go ahead and do it, as far as either revoking the resolution or putting another resolution on.
You have no legal obligation to print and pass to the voters with a ballot the general plan.
Actually, I think we're at a point where the general plan has gotten to a controversy where it needs to be brought to the people, let them to be better informed. I think after the election on this, we'll be sure to know whether we have a better guideline or a pretty bad one. And I think it's at a point now that I think we ought to proceed with it.
Should we vote it down and put it on the ballot again?
Well, that, I guess, for your look-see, there's a series of alternatives, 6 alternative language for the ballot, which you could look at in no great... we have Mr. Hitches. Well, this is true. This is the elective officers, 21 years. This would amend the charter to permit a 21-year-old who became 21 years old the day before he had to file to run for office, to be eligible for office.
This brings into line with the general law cities and the other state offices.
I think so. This is also the one that was defeated last November, wasn't it?
Bringing them all back that were defeated. Let's get the whole list out.
Well, this is defeated. The one on the 5,000 on the that's the 5% differential on local business. That was defeated. I mean, this is the year of the defeated ballot proposition. That doesn't make them wrong, though.
Ellen, did you have some comments?
Well, this was defeated by 2,000 votes out of about 100,000 ballots. And we've had a request to do this. Also, you can, at 21 years old, run for state assembly. Most of the charters in California allow a 21-year-old to run for public office, city council in the city, and I feel that it should be resubmitted to the ballot due to the requests that we have.
How many requests do we have?
Mine. 4 of them. Alan's, mine.
Well, I mean, it's a good cause and all that. I can think of some that have the heck knocked out of them 3 different times that I think are darn important. I know they're right, but they're going to continue to get their heads kicked in. You know, like how many times do they say no?
Well, the only thing, the 21-year-old guy that wanted to run 2 years ago, he's 23 now. Now he can legally run.
Well, he's much changed his position because there's a 21-year-old guy who wants to run against him.
So let's look at it this way. Why don't we today try to resolve and get a lot of the ones we have coming in, and then when we get to the point where we want to limit or distribute them between September or hold some off till November, we get to that point.
Let's keep it in consideration. We make
Yeah,
our priority list.
I say
Yeah.
we keep this in consideration.
Now, is this in legal language already, Mr. Butler?
Your Honor, it is.
Okay, well, since Mr. Hitch is mostly in favor of this, this will come up again, and we have this available to us, and then when we come to consider the rest of it, unless you want to push it now on a motion, but it's up to you. So it will come up again.
I think we should consider this with the rest of them.
All right.
There are several recommendations from, left over from the Charter Review Committee,
Hello, Dolly.
like civil service and so on. I think there's one that was defeated last time. I guess it was 2, wasn't it? One was the mayor's pay and the council's pay. And I think if we're going to get good people to run for office, that we've got to improve the situation. I know I joined the council 4 years ago last month, June 6th. I would say the time involved, I don't know whether it's a workload, but the time involved is just about doubled over a 4-year period. And it's not for myself I'm speaking. I would rather spend less time, and you can get less money, but you can't do the job without spending the time it takes. And if you're going to get good people to run for both mayor and council, it should be increased. I read in the paper that Bill Quirk, who was the vice chairman of the Charter Review Committee, had brought this and others up. So there's an idea that has been suggested that the council pay be tied in as a comparable position to a member of the County Board of Supervisors. And the mayor's job comparable in importance and so on to what level of judge was it? I read Superior Court judge. And I would like to see this considered for September.
Move the attorney drafts up the wording on, we can consider with the rest of them.
I don't know how the others feel about this, but tying it in with the Board of Supervisors and Superior Court judge.
Councilman of the board and the mayor is to the, he said this morning that he wasn't a lawyer.
Who? Well, I thought it was Fred said that he was taking his reputation as an attorney, and you were taking yours as a CPA and auditor.
Okay. If they work at my store for technicians, that kind of problem, the sales and that kind of repair, that things don't work out too
You want to draft a charter amendment which would set the council salaries equal to the Board of Supervisors to include the automatic gizmo as they go up or down, as the case may be.
Not to exceed, doesn't mean we necessarily have to go to what they're at.
Who would put you at it?
Ourselves.
You have a piece of paper including this? I haven't heard this suggestion before.
No.
Oh, we're developing it now, okay. Well, let's see, Ivor was the one that was making the recommendation. What's your recommendation on it?
Well, I would like to see a language, we could go back to the same as we had before, but I think that a lot of people don't realize the tremendous differential there is, and and it might be a better way of handling the whole thing. When you consider councilmen in Los Angeles are paid $17,000 a year, they've just been increased.
The mayor, 35.
Board of Education is in nice shape now. You know that? Barnes introduced a bill for $100 a month for them.
Okay, well, Frank, we'll get to something on this. I think I understand what you got in mind. All right, once you come back with something like that for further consideration of the council. Is there anything else from the attorney's office? Well, you knew that the Mr. Quirk
Made some other suggestions.
Right. Made other suggestions which had to do with the not cleaning up, but carrying through final conclusions of the Charter Review Committee, and either one, submit their recommendations to the voters, or two, formally act to reject their recommendations. The matter has been deferred according to his letter from June of '62.
That's on two areas, right?
Yeah, he sent to you a package of material here which would considerably amend the personnel area, and basically would put the personnel director in the city manager's office. Repeal and amend a lot of the civil service provisions and so forth.
Now, this is a controversial area, and one which we talked about before, and I think it should go on the ballot. I would like to see it, at least the language and so on, be reviewed by the attorney, and we consider it with the rest of them when it comes back. We're talking about two.
But there's a hell of a lot of time. Excuse me.
Will you outline briefly on the?
Well, what I would instruct the city attorney be instructed to go ahead and to at least draft up in ballot language and form the contents of that, and then come on back and we'll consider it with the rest of them.
Yeah, I talked about something the other day, and I don't know if anybody has done anything with it. These various sections of the charter that had the one-time verbiage to implement the intent of the charter review. The charter's still full of that stuff, and it has to be taken out by a vote of the people, doesn't it? Well, let's see, what would that be? I'm sure there's a lot of it in here. One is an example of that. You grab the section in the book, for example, the procedure for the 6-year term for the city attorney of course, the intent was to stagger the attorney with the mayor and so forth, so we probably got a paragraph or so in the book. And all of that sort of stuff should be pulled out. You spend more time reading through that trying to find the meat of the subject, and I think all of that stuff should be stripped out that has been implemented. Jim, you got any recommendations?
Well, what are we going to do?
Jack, you want to call these out by each individual one, and then as what you are referring to?
Basically, the whole concept that's expressed here is the consideration of the personnel director and the civil service, or the personnel department coming under the city manager, placing that to a vote. And I say instruct the city attorney to come back with the language that will allow us to put it to a vote, and we'll discuss it with the other amendments.
I don't think there's anything wrong with putting something on which we may oppose. And this has been a recommendation. I don't agree with it, but nevertheless, I would not vote against it being going on the ballot. And
well, for this reason, then I'll second your motion referring it to the city attorney to come back for ballot on it.
It's all prepared, I'll guarantee you.
Oh, actually, for the whole concept of it coming in the city manager's office, I wouldn't even want to see it go that far to prepare any legal language.
It's already prepared. It has been prepared.
Or to be submitted anyway.
Well, if it gets defeated, why, and it's not by too much, we can put it on again, too.
Well, to be sure I understand now, this paper here would eliminate about 10 pages of the charter and add additional 2 pages. For instance, it takes out all of Article Roman 8, civil service. It goes, I don't understand what all of that, I haven't read it yet.
Well,
It makes a
basically,
broad, doesn't it, Lou, make a broad, far-reaching change in the concept
Pull it out
of
of here.
personnel as heretofore practiced around here?
Yeah.
Does lots. These suggestions do much more than putting the director, than abolishing the Civil Service Commission and putting the director of personnel into the manager. They go much further.
well, my only point is if we leave it buried, then we're never going to even review it. And I say, maybe not this September, but let's start something on, let's establish a conference on it, let's talk about it, whether or not we'll go to a vote.
To have this continually hung over the head of the department is not fair.
That's right.
And I feel like Tom does. I'm opposed to it, but it was a recommendation of the Charter Review Committee, and maybe we should let the voters decide.
So you want something that goes all the way, or just those 2 areas, the Civil Service Commission, the planning director? I mean, whoops.
No. What do you know?
Try that.
Personnel director. What was that program you were going to propose to?
Sorry, Jim.
Jim? Now you've done it. He's working on you.
Now you've done it. Now
I let it out of the bag, didn't I, Harry?
Well, I would move then that we instruct the city attorney to go on back and come back with the ballot language that would be required to place the Civil Service Commission, the Personnel Director, and the Personnel Department under the city manager.
Been moved.
Now, I would, and my feeling on that is that the commission wouldn't go under the manager.
No, I was
but,
going to say that.
the department. All I'm saying is the department and the director.
Yeah.
And I would think that even though possibly the personnel director may not share the same view that it should, or maybe the manager doesn't even share that view, but that at least that you coordinate with those 2, that if it were to go under there, what would be the best structure of having it under that point, and then come back with a proposal, Mr. Singh.
Your Honor, I can't remember why the Charter Review Committee made this as a recommendation. At one time, we had all of that information, and I don't know their reason for this.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak to that?
Yes, you may, for information.
The reason they did is because they felt that all departments in the city should be under a manager, and it was part of putting the planning director under a manager and the personnel director under a manager, and centering these activities in the manager's office.
Well, we had a vote twice on their recommendation of putting the planning department under the city manager, and it was rejected very substantially, both 3 times, very substantially.
It was always tied.
Once directly and 2 times tied to something else that it was incidental to.
I think what's hanging over the head of some of the people that have worked in the Charter Review Committee is that they wanted the council to take action either to put this to the vote of people or reject their recommendation, one or the other.
Well, Your Honor, if the council, you run into this danger, if the council orders this to the ballot, it could be interpreted that the council agrees with this recommendation. I think Mr. DeKirby has stated his position very well, and I share his opinion. And I just wonder if that is something the council wishes to consider when ordering this matter to the ballot.
Well, since there's no second to the motion, maybe the council want to further probe into this on their own, and then it come up the next time. We still have time for you to proceed with it.
If
that's okay, if there are no seconds to the motion.
and we can proceed on those.
Now, there's one other thing that I have in my mind, and we've put a lot of thought to it. We've had a lot of people bring this to our attention. Is there any way to simplify the wording on the ballot so that when people vote, when they vote yes, they know they're voting yes on what they're, and no, so that there's a distinction there that can easily be discernible by the voters. We've talked about that at hours length, and then when we come to this many propositions to go on to the ballot, if there's any way legally that the city attorney in wording this ballot could keep that in mind, I think it would be appreciated by the people.
City clerk wanted to put out a city clerk's explainer sort of thing. I don't know what.
Well,
that, but I mean that was an idea in that direction.
We can, and you may remember on Proposition C that you did participate in and working over some drafts and came up with what I thought was pretty simple language, completely legal. And we would continue that program here to make sure that this stuff is kept clear. And a yes vote means a yes vote.
Then I can tell by what you say this is going to be considered very carefully in what you write.
We feel very strongly on that very point that this has to be put in terms that people can understand.
We had a classic on that in Proposition C, and you know what? They're trying to hide it all.
Yes, right. You can't win again. Well, anything else from the attorney's office?
That's it, Mr.
All right. There are a number of citizens here that might be interested in making some recommendations, and suppose any of the citizens who are here interested in suggesting something to council, perhaps you raise your hand and I'll recognize you, and I'll have you make some recommendations. Yes, sir. I wrote this out in order to keep it
brief. My name is Elliot Cushman, the San Diego Independent. I compliment this council on its constructive endeavors concerning charter revision. I'm a member of the Charter Review Committee and the Mayor's Finance Committee. I think I have a little appreciation of what you're up against. For many years it has been felt that the charter provisions requiring that the city use only one buyer in legal advertising and many other purchases not related to legal advertising be rewritten so that the city is offered complete flexibility consistent with the good business and government practice of having more than one supplier for all services. I was interested to see that occupy some little of your time today. It will simply follow that the city will obtain better services and economies as a result of this change. At present, the city has no choice in the purchase of legal advertising and many other services, and I hope this total problem will be cured by this council, specifically dealing with the newspaper situation. The wording now is that city legal advertising may only be placed in a responsible, and we're not quarreling with that word, daily newspaper. We propose that the deletion of the daily newspaper, which, taking the leaf from our city manager's book, would then make this a permissive thing, whereby you could use other newspapers of general circulation that have been legally adjudicated in this area. Would not make it mandatory, of course, but it would open the way and allow you a competitive thrust here.
What section is that?
Section 113. It's on page 80.
What is the situation right now? I assume delinquent tax lists, and I also there's an awful lot of legal advertising going on the Daily Transcript. Isn't this their main lease on life or something?
Yes, it is a legal paper and used for many of those purposes. We publish a great part of the delinquent tax list. We publish all of that. That's for the county, of course. And they do they already accept what we are requesting here.
Is this unique to our charter? I mean, is it unusual, a provision like this? I don't know.
I can't answer that, I don't know either, do you, Mr. Fisher?
I think it goes back to the time when there were multiple daily newspapers in every city, and I think it was contemplated that would again be in this city.
What is the requirement of general law for these positions?
This subject is, Mr. Acker is more knowledgeable on this than I am. We have an elections code, the government's code, we have all kinds of stuff for publication, daily, weekly, twice weekly, ordinances, and
Well, let's ask Mr. Acker. Can you comment anything on this, Mr. Acker?
Legal news, like there are certain requirements regarding, for instance, the annexation. The state law sets up certain requirements for legal advertising regarding annexations, and it does not indicate that it has to be a daily paper, but just a paper of general circulation in the area proposed to be annexed. For example, we can use the Escondido Times Advocate, we can use the Fallbrook newspapers, we can use the Del Mar Surf Comber, and this type of paper for that particular type of thing. With regard to legal advertising, the problem involved in not having a daily newspaper is not one that I know of particularly that is a legal requirement, but it's one of practicality.
How do other cities, Pasadena, Long Beach, Oakland...
Well, you're all talking about charter cities now, and I'm not familiar with their charters as to what their requirements are for legal advertising.
I would like to find out whether we're in step or out of step. I'd also wonder what general law...
Here again, you have another problem, Mr. Kirby, and that is that in most of the cities to which you have reference, you have competing news chain papers. You see, even though we have two newspapers of daily circulation here in the city of San Diego, only one of them bids.
What causes that? What happens in some of these cities that you have,
you talk about a practical problem and it's necessary to have it daily and so forth, but yet I know there are many great pressures to get something on a docket emergency, a big deal is being held up or something, a lot of money tied up. Yet I see some of these cities that have a weekly newspaper only, and they have their councils meet once every 2 weeks. They must really have some real terrific problems, like on a rezoning or...
You're talking about charter cities?
Not necessarily. I mean...
General law cities?
The problem is the same to the citizen. They don't really care what's the problem. I mean, if there's a problem, whether you're building a house in Del Mar or whether you're building a house in the city of San Diego, you do have zoning, you do have planning, you do have subdivision maps, I assume. Now, why is it such a big problem in San Diego that something be done, in a day? I mean, I'm not talking about...
Because the city charter has a requirement, for example, that an ordinance or a resolution of general concern to the city of San Diego must be published within 10 days after its adoption. So it's possible under these conditions that we couldn't meet a Thursday or Sunday deadline. We might have to. By the time you have certain mechanical problems, because we have 10 days doesn't mean we can always publish on a Thursday or Sunday. Sometimes 10 days because of proofing and other types of practical problems prohibits a Thursday or a Sunday printing. It may mean you have to print on Friday. That may be the first day you can print it, or it may be the last day.
That's in our charter. I think that we should consider
it should be if at all, it could be permissive.
Certainly. Yes, I think we should consider permissive legislation because when this charter was established, and I think this has been in ever since 1931, we had the San Diego Sun in those days, and so we did have a competitive situation.
Not only that, the last time the daily newspaper bid against the current official newspaper of the city was about 1956 when the Daily Transcript bid, and it took the council approximately 3 hours to make the determination, and they determined at that point on the basis of who had the maximum circulation.
Well, of course, there's another alternative.
We do have, through the charter, the provision where we can publish a city bulletin and distribute our own newspaper of the delinquent, well, not delinquencies, but any publications or notices and so on, and go ahead and have it distributed through a distributed. I mean, that's Section 114 on the Bureau of Information and Publicity, which allows the city, when it is to the advantage of the city, that the city bulletin shall be published, distributed, or sold in such a manner on such terms as the council may determine. So there is permissive legislation only to the extent that the only other alternative we have is going and publishing our own and distributing it.
Well, that's not permissive.
But it doesn't give us the permissive to, or the manager or the council or anybody else, any other permission to go to anything other than the responsible daily.
Well, I'm like Ivor. I don't know what the other cities do, what they have, and if our system is bad, there must be a lot of systems that are better, and we ought to take a look at some of them, find out what they do and what sort of problems it does create, and if the problems are imaginary or not.
Well, you have recommendations?
Yeah, I'd like to get a report. I don't know whether from the clerk or from the manager. I think probably from the manager on this kind of thing, what other cities are doing.
From the official newspaper.
Particularly California cities.
The clerk and the manager together.
Okay. I'd move this be referred to the clerk and manager for a report, certainly not less than a week.
Discussion on this? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, report to manager. Anything else from, anyone else from the floor? I think Mildred, you have
I
something?
just would like to call your attention to Section 140 of the Charter and do the transit situation. The last sentence reads, employees of any public utility taken over by the city who are deemed in the service of such utility at the time of its acquisition shall be deemed to hold their positions as though appointed under the civil service provisions of this charter. That might be something you might consider eliminating to leave you some freedom of action. We have had one instance of a water company which was taken over by the city where it worked out not very well.
Is it your recommendation, Mildred, or the commission's that this be submitted to
This is one of the ones that we had on, in February 1964, we had a group of suggestions on the civil service portion. This was one of them.
Well, this is an interesting question. I'm not too familiar with it, but with this particular provision, here we've got a charter of the city which states they shall come in and have civil service protection, and we have a transit bill which is proposed that protects bargaining rights, which is in direct conflict. In which case, what supersedes what? If the district is for it, then the provisions of the act of the district will govern. Our charter will have no force or effect.
You can do it by district.
If, on the other hand, the city should acquire a utility, then it is operative, and the guys come into the civil service. There's no choice.
And the recommendation is just to eliminate Section 140 entirely.
Well, not the first part of it.
Of course, it cuts both ways. This offers to the city considerable protection.
Oh, what's that? Cuts away our protection?
No, I say it offers you in some circumstances protection.
How?
The guys are deemed to hold their positions as though appointed under the civil service provisions of this charter, which raises all kinds of questions of the extent to which they operate through unions, collective bargaining agreements, rights to strike, and otherwise. We've never really looked at this thing, but because I say it cuts both ways. It's elimination. If there's a transit strike and we took them over, that strike would be over right then and there. I'm not suggesting that. I'd say that you want to think about this. We haven't really looked at it, but it's...
The thing is, the bargaining in, I think the way the charter reads now, if you should take over the transit system, you are obligated to blanket in all employees, regardless.
Without a test, without
Yes.
taking the examination?
Yes.
What would you suggest that?
Well, I think Mr. Butler's suggestion is good, that you look at it from both angles and perhaps rewrite it to protect the city both ways.
Well, should we rewrite, who would be in the best position to refer this for a review and then come back with something that we can look over?
Civil Service Commission.
Well, I think the
Even
attorney and Mr. Fay can work it out in,
You mean you don't want to do this one, Ed?
Controversial.
since we had this difficult experience with one taking over the utility where
I
the
would move
employees
that
didn't work out, we are a little bit leery.
I think this should come from your
this be referred to Civil Service, or to Lou Fay and Butler, to come up with a rewording so to protect us both ways.
Second. Moved and second. Just because Ed likes it and wants discussion.
To do what, Ivor?
Make strong recommendations in this controversial issue.
Sure.
No. The motion is to refer this matter to Civil Service Commission and Lou Fay and your office to come back with the proper wording. For ballot proposition, is that it? Ballot proposition. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the council at this time
After
endorses it.
considering all
This is
angles,
for further discussion.
Yeah. You may decide that nothing can be done.
Do you think we ought to put in the charter something to tie the salary setting procedures with the retirement considerations into one package?
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? I know it's getting late, so let's try to wind this up. Yes, Colonel?
Mr. Mayor, you know I was a member of the Charter Review Committee in '62. You just gave your city manager quite an order here to check in all the various cities throughout the state of California on the different ordinances. Well, now, don't forget this, there are not too many charter cities. There's only 2 in all of San Diego County, Chula Vista and San Diego. All the rest of them are class
General law.
4, 5, 6, general law, state of California. So I would think, as a suggestion, just as an ordinary citizen, you can find yourself a charter city, and that's the one that has the principle.
Well, if you have the charter cities roughly our size, and then general law cities, you go to one source for that.
But the general law may not be a provision of the state government code, and there may be something left to the, one of the few things left to the general law cities for them to decide themselves. Ed, one question. If we proposed a transit district of our own on the city, and it passed in an election, would any subsequent transit district by the state preempt an existing district by a city?
Yeah, if the enabling act at the Sacramento level, if voted into effect by a majority of the people within the district, would preempt, well,
Suppose we owned it and we're operating
I
it
don't know.
already.
Suppose we, it's a thought that came to me, trying to say we wanted to preempt if the state appeared to be running ahead in a direction of what we consider to be an evil, and we took a different approach on it and established a district more to our liking before that time and subjected it to the people on a vote.
Yeah.
Could you?
Of course, you wouldn't be establishing a district because you can only act within your own corporate limits. Probably you'd be limited to some acquisition yourself or through a non-profit corporation.
Maybe the county could do it.
No, I think you need enabling legislation at the state level to create a district which is a political entity of the state.
Yeah, but according to their enabling specification.
Which are pretty horrible.
Because the state has the power to grant this kind of to make this kind of an entity.
But if we had a district within the city, in which we established ourselves, then would this exclude us from the preemption by the state in a totally enabling district in the total area?
Well, you have to have a total vote inside the city, Jack, on this particular legislation before.
Well, if you went ahead, you formed a district coterminous with the boundaries of the city, and then acquired a transit system and ran the thing here, then a district was created. First, you probably wouldn't have the requisite vote. Two, if you did have the requisite vote, that district would then have to come in and condemn you out.
Yeah, but what if we ran a ballot proposition on forming a district here, and so the people would be informed, list the costs, and list some of the other things, and so on, just so that, we could get an indication, and if it passed, fine, if it didn't pass, well, then of course the other districts, if it came along, might not include some of the information we might put out in our...
You can't use the word district, Jack, because the word district has the connotation of being a political entity with various powers. We can't create that kind of an entity and give it the kind of powers that this proposed district has. The grant of that kind of power has to come from the state legislature. What about a lighting district? Well, here often lighting districts come in by virtue of, I think, state law. Included within our charter, and unless you feel that you want to put this in a proposition area, maybe we better go on to the other.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to add one thing. I meant to do it before Elliot departed here. I'm Dick Culler, Advertising Manager, Union Tribune Publishing Company. I was here for other reasons, but in speaking to Elliot's proposition on legal advertising, and representing the union, which is the official paper. It's my understanding on certain advertising, such as the bid for the city advertising now, that it must run daily for 10 days, and I presume this is one reason why a certain amount of this must go in a daily newspaper. Just what it's worth, and I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to say something before Elliot left.
In other words, if we would make one change, we'd have to make that change too.
Well, I just believe, and Mr. Acker can bear this out, that a certain amount of your advertising must run so many consecutive days.
Well, that's true. And for instance, in the case of the elections, the state law requires so many days before the elections we run a continuous type of advertising page, and pamphlets are available in the office of the city clerk. There's a certain amount of things that we have to do. We don't have to do everything.
But there's no pernicious legislation which allows you to use the judgment factor on other things that aren't specifically required.
Well, I still think we're on the right track. Check out and see what the others are doing. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Anything else from anyone else? Yes.
Your Honor, I noticed that this charter was written by a board of freeholders in 1930, elected by the people of the city of San Diego. And every year there's a lot of changes, and maybe the council might at some time consider the idea of putting before the people a new board of freeholders and let them make up a charter that might or might not be acceptable to the people. At least it would confirm that if they turned it down, a new one written by the Board of Freeholders, it would also at least let everyone know that they approve the present one. Well, of course, if we did that, you would absolutely start from complete scratch with nothing. And I think that if we were in a complete mess and a complete muddle, that would be the thing to do. But I think, generally speaking, we've got a pretty well-oiled machine.
Grease is the word.
To me, it's real slick, huh? What you're trying to do is say railroad. But to upset the whole thing with something like that, I think basically we have a good charter and we have a well-run city, and this was considered when the Charter Review Committee was appointed that this be done.
Like that?
And it was an issue by the Charter Review Committee itself whether this should be done, and in each instance it was decided not to do it.
Imagine if the Charter Review Committee happened to be a board of freeholders, and they came forward with their 96 recommendations. Stop and think, would it have ever passed? I doubt it. Jack. Because Mildred with her troops would be out there fighting it like mad because of one provision in there.
you'd find the planning people fighting it like mad on the other side from the other provisions, and you go down the line and you have so many people that are mad at a small portion of it. The thing is, and that's what was wrong with this charter. The first charter review recommendations, not the review, but the freeholders' recommendations, it didn't go through. It went right down the drain. So then they went out and compromised, and like some of these bills that go through Congress, so we got enough votes to run the thing through, and then it's taken years to straighten the thing out. I think we're getting pretty close on the thing, but there's one thing that we did talk about. We were in Proposition C as a result of it. It was legally garbled, not clear, and we found that a referendum could hit something like Proposition C, and we did talk about asking the Bar Association, a group of attorneys, etc., to look at the legal ramifications of what this said, to clean it up and clear it up. Now, what's been done with that? On your charter, this is, wasn't it?
It was set a date certain. Conference 11/24/1964.
Well, that's only 7 months ago. I mean, like, when are we going to take care of it? We're ready to rewrite the whole book, but we don't care if it's legal or not. You know?
I'm ready to set a date certain. How about the rest of you guys?
Sure. I think it should be done prior to November, if possible. I mean, the judge begged and pleaded with us to do it, and if we had done that a year ago, we wouldn't be $300,000 light in our budget.
What are we setting a date certain for? To discuss it?
No, I think, I don't know.
I don't understand what we're talking about here.
We had a meeting on this about 2 months ago, I think.
Well, maybe Mr. Seaman has the reason it's on here.
This came about during a council conference discussion of the hotel motel tax related charter ambiguity. And it suggested a conference be set up in the future to create a legal committee to review the charter for changes in legal language.
Well, why don't the city attorney come forward with a recommendation of the type of people that could best do the job? Certainly, we could give it to Fred Lawrence for the legal end, but the accounting end, Ed could take care of. Why don't you move to have Lawrence appoint a committee of accountants to rewrite it? You think we want to have it that clear and clean?
Jeff, why don't you, Ed, why don't you check into this and give us a report back on this?
Maybe ask the Bar Association and the judges or something like that, because the problem is here, and one of them called this our attention. They might have some suggestions.
Yeah, by Tuesday, can you give us a report on this?
One of the
Who's working on it?
I don't think
How
this
far
has to be
to
so tight to get on the September election, but I think it ought to be ready.
We got just an awful rapid. Yeah, I understand, but maybe it was dropped. Maybe guys working on it, or just find out whether
dropped.
One of the things that concerns me, Tom, is we're running to a deadline in regards to the September election, and when you start to look at our conference schedule, we better start making some room so that we have additional proposals, or we want to review the proposals that we're getting back in legal form, so we set up enough so that we can adequately discuss these propositions, okay?
It will be set up. It's just like our budget. It ran perfectly.
I'm just wondering if, Your Honor, I'm wondering if when the attorney brings these back, if we shouldn't meet one day on this particular subject, rather than when we're all tired after starting here. It's such of great interest, I think, that if we, and one day, other than a council day.
We spent more time this morning on a cabaret license than we did on the whole charter this afternoon. Everything is too competitive.
Does this make sense that the city attorney get this together and we meet like fresh in the morning? And
Harry, the guy that's over 21 may not be able to run for office, but he can go drink at the cabaret.
Legally.
Well, when I schedule these things, I'm aware of many things to be sure to get as many councilmen out as I can, and at the same time not conflict with some of the other important work. So I'll try to schedule these things accordingly. Yeah.
This morning we asked on the legislation or the action of the governor, and we're going to get a report back later today on where we stood, that we might take some action regarding the appropriation or the lack of appropriation for the prison site.
Yes, Kim, we do anything on this?
Possibly Tuesday, maybe,
we may want to take some action, and I think we're going to get us a report back today, and I would hope by tomorrow you can contact us and let us know what it's all
Tell
about.
Tom to contact the council and tell us what
Mr. Leopard
he asked about. We can call a special session if we had to.
Mr. Leopard raised his hand.
I was just going to say, I was talking to John Harder at lunch with the chamber, and he said that he heard that there was a special release or news release pertaining to this subject to be released by the state within the next day or two, explaining what the next steps would be and what was involved.
Yeah, well, our whole purpose for having a legislative representative up there is to keep us informed, and my feeling is there may be some action that we should be taking, and I would sure as heck like to know what that action might be.
Marty's talking to Bud right now. I hope you'll have some report from Bud right now. I don't know whether Bud has a word on it or not. We'll see.
Well, this is fairly important to the community, and
a lot of good
if,
campaigning.
Tom, if you need us, call us.
No further business? Entertain motion.
Well, aren't you going to hear from Bud Porter on this prison facility?
Well, you guys want to wait a couple minutes?
I'll be out of my office.
Well, why don't we wait right here and Bud
We can have. All right, gentlemen, we're meeting here on the council docket this morning. Anything on page 1? Page 2.
Item 8 has been withdrawn, Mr. Hahn, because the subdividers subsequently agreed to install sidewalks, which is what the schools were technically doing.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, the appeal has been withdrawn?
Yes.
There'll be something. There is another party joining in the appeal, however, isn't there?
Who's the other party?
We're informed that another person will appear before you, appealing this matter, and we would advise you, if this person does appear, that you may hear his appeal on this thing.
Let me ask you a question on that. The person is supposed to file appeal in a certain time, didn't they? And did it. But that person who complied is withdrawing. The other person has not appealed within the allocated time, have they?
Can you withdraw an appeal?
Well, that's another question, Jack, that, as I say, this just hit me this morning.
Yeah, well, we don't want to start honoring appeals that don't qualify. If Baylor's made the appeal and he's withdrawn it,
we'll have to go get some more background
as your deputy attorney.
Yeah, I mean, we have to watch out for you, Ed.
One of the problems, Ed, to be consistent, is the fact that, remember you gave a ruling on someone that cannot withdraw a request for a rezoning? I'm wondering if appeal is the same thing.
Yeah, this is, I say, Jack, this is a
Where
very
the
real
mechanic
question.
starts and then it's out of the hands of
What's the paperwork of this withdrawal, this appeal?
We have a letter from the school board withdrawing their appeal.
And they were the only ones that made.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're the only qualified.
Only qualified.
Well, I understand somebody else is going to appeal this thing.
I understand that someone else is planning to appeal today, that's right.
But they have nothing in
They
writing.
have not filed an appeal.
But how, they can't appeal, they haven't qualified.
Do they have the right to appeal?
Is it 10 days past?
Sure, it's passed.
Do they have the right to appeal?
No.
Well, you can go back to your study and give us an answer.
Yeah, let us know in the chambers.
Give us your usual good answer.
Well, the memorandum I had is that they can, but I don't figure how they got to that result.
It was like a written off-the-cuff opinion.
It's very loose.
On 9, do we have a map on that?
Yeah. Since there are no protests, I probably won't be opening my yip about it. Last number it is.
100% of the ownership.
Hold on to this.
Part of the Grantville area plan as far as the personal land use is concerned.
It's over in the Grantville area, it's not in the Murphy Canyon area.
Grantville, yeah.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, alright, that'll do it.
Anything else on 2? Page 3. Page 4.
On 100, we get the technical defect corrected.
Yes. On 3,
What?
Why is that on, why is something like that on our docket? I've never seen anything. 13.
I understand that, Bayshore Motors, hold on, that once the Pacific Beach entity, or a piece of it at least, has retained the identity of Bayshore Motors. The downtown thing apparently has changed hands, and it's the downtown outfit that we had this purchase contract with for certain outstanding pieces of equipment that haven't been delivered yet.
Oh, I see. It's
We've
not
ordered
just
up.
because they're changing it.
No, it's because we
We
have
have
on
not-
order from them a pickup truck, 20 police cars, 14 ambulances, and some parts.
You'd like to get out of it, probably.
Ivor asked me to ask this question. He was wondering why these guys are getting all the publicity. Now that we're on the air, you know.
They're really not going out of business as they're advertising.
You timed it wrong, you were supposed to set it in there.
This is the greatest thing since those linen stores we had.
Item 100?
Yeah, item
They
100.
They got the
Yeah.
stuff for the city.
Item 100.
Quitting business, filing.
The statement here, granting petition for the improvement, is not entirely accurate. We are not granting now a petition for an improvement. What we are doing is accepting a petition for an improvement, but not granting it because other work is required to be done. What this resolution does is, and this I think is the first time since I've been here we've done that, that is appoint engineers and appoint attorneys to handle the 1913 proceeding, all at the cost of the developer, all at the cost of the bonds ultimately to be issued on this.
This is
Done under Section 71 of our charter.
No, this is the 1913 Act.
This is a 1913 Act.
What is the, what potential liability is the city looking at? We could okay something like this and put it 100% in someone else's hands. Is there a possibility of throwing an undue burden on the lands?
No, in this regard, the burden on the lands in terms of the engineering costs are costs which are very carefully controlled by the city engineer, and they can't exceed, what is it, 8%?
8%, that's right.
Which is usual. The cost for the legal services here breaks into two parts. One, the services for the bond opinion alone, which is mandatory in any event in these areas, would come to somewhere around $22,000 or $23,000. The additional work to do all of the legal proceedings in this matter comes to an additional $20,000 out of a total $4 million package. So we conclude the burden is not heavy, and have watched those fees very carefully so it would be.
You were willing to certify as our legal advisor that there are absolutely no problems with it.
I'm willing now to state that this is now in a posture to the end that it will go through without any problems.
Very good.
It's taken some time to bring it to that head. You might like to say hello to Mr. Frank Hamilton, who is the counsel requested by the property owner to handle the legal work in this thing. That's that handsome fellow sitting next to Ross Stark.
From the real Hamilton, please stand
Oh,
up.
Frank.
To be sure we don't confuse you with Ross Stark.
There were three good-looking men sitting there, all three of them
Don't do
smiling.
that, Joe. The real's like a nice guy.
The real Mr. Hamilton to stand up.
Anything else on this one?
102. Is this Hitch's front yard?
Yeah.
Do you need it?
Haven't heard anything about it. Nobody's
Just for a park.
said anything to me about it.
6 feet wide. Is there a 6-foot park out there, Alex?
Yeah.
We have a 100 feet of right-of-way. 88 feet of right-of-way is adequate. People on the south side of the street have asked for 6 foot worth back. The people on the opposite side would also thereby become eligible too, where they petition for it.
No problem.
This will involve relocation of certain meters and hydrants at petitioner's expense.
And the city has no need for that 6 feet in the foreseeable future?
No.
Is that 100-foot wide street where you've got a 1-to-1 cut that's about 50 feet long in the middle of the street? I mean, split-level streets out there are quite the thing.
There's no split level on Montezuma.
Block.
On 103, Ed, now the item 8 has come up the way you said it did. Withdrawal. No, we just proceed with this. So we're nothing. We better wait until I get to the big one. I don't understand this withdrawal of an appeal. Once an appeal has been lodged, I don't know that the appellant has any power to withdraw it from your consideration. As I say, I'm bringing the guy up now who's given us some of this advice. But this item here has nothing in it about sidewalks.
That makes sense, but if the hearing's been scheduled, anybody who wants to speak can speak. However, the appeal would still be based on the appeal that he made on sidewalks, and any other basis of an appeal would not. They could talk to the sidewalk,
yes,
but nothing else.
Because if you lodge an appeal from this thing, I can rely upon your appeal and wouldn't file any myself, and could then come in and be heard, I think, because you can hear witnesses at the hearing here.
But if they appeal on something else like this,
then it's narrowly limited to the scope of that appeal.
Yeah.
Do we have any guarantees from the developer that he will put in the sidewalks as requested in the appeal?
Whoops, where did the...
He
what?
He signed an agreement.
He signed an agreement, so in effect, to listen to a bunch of people come up there and say we want sidewalks when he's already given us a guarantee.
He's going to put in sidewalks?
So, the appeal was for sidewalks, so to have a long hearing over nothing seems a little ridiculous.
as long as it's agreement with us and not with the Board of Education.
It says here that recommend the safety of pedestrians can be provided by an easement and walkway leading from an intersection stuff. Mr. Wall has agreed to install sidewalks as outlined above. And the superintendent of schools says that the school district concerned has been removed and he's withdrawing the appeal, but apparently it's been resolved to his satisfaction. We should bring the matter on here if anybody wants to be heard, I suppose, and then
I'd ask them what their interest is. If they want sidewalks, say, okay, you've got them, and get out of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Item 105. I'd like to know the present amount of this perpetuity fund. I think it is probably Mount Hope. Isn't that Mount Hope perpetuity fund?
The current market value of this fund is now at $915,000. 58% of the fund is invested in bonds, 35% in common stock, 3% in preferred, 4% cash.
And so the city gets that interest on this or profit off of the investment?
No.
Who gets it?
This fund does.
We subsidize this also, don't we? It isn't self-sustaining.
Not quite.
Well, why don't we loan them some money at 5%? Borrow some money at 5% and take care of it.
Actually, our most recent corporate bond purchases have been at a yield of 4.6 and 4.8%, so that we currently are approaching that interest level in the current bond market.
These are authorities on consumption rates and so forth now, and we'd like to really get into this.
Well, what I want to know on this is who decided that the interest or the money on this perpetuity would go to the perpetuity fund instead of to our general fund?
It's in the charter.
It's in the charter.
Now, we did make some charter changes whereby interest earnings from certain other funds will now come to the general fund, but I don't think it included the cemetery fund, as I recall, because by definition, a perpetuity fund has to earn money for itself.
It costs us $1,200 per year to keep the money with First National.
$100 a month for administering the investments of $1 million. About $1 million.
Do we get a return then on that?
Yeah, all
the earnings go plowed in
back into the Perpetuity fund. $1,200 comes out of the fund, out of the perpetuity fund?
It's born from there, yeah.
Okay. On 104, what's that wiring for?
104, Kim. Yeah. This is a contract with a private firm to do certain electrical design work for us. The electrical design activity in the engineering department has a substantial backlog. This particular facility is required. We're working against a certain time schedule and providing adequate electricity service to the Timpson and West Wing of the Art Gallery. It's also somewhat involved with the relocation of Park Boulevard, a capital job that's scheduled for later on in this fiscal year.
Get that out of the zoo.
Huh?
Get that out of the zoo. You're going to give them a part of the road, aren't you?
To the zoo?
Get that 2 cents back.
So this is consistent with our, from time to time, utilizing outside engineering firm for design work in peak load situations of our own.
I want to go back to 105 now and find out if it is in the charter that the profit from the perpetuity fund must go into the perpetuity. It's about $50,000 a year.
Whether it must go, it was going in now.
It's going in
you
now.
You want to know whether it has to go in.
I want to know whether it has to continue to do that.
Can I read? Eyes are twinkling over here.
Can I read from the charter here for a minute?
Yeah.
All income derived from the investment of the monies in said perpetuity fund, together with the balance of the sale price of said lot, not placed in the perpetuity fund, shall be expended in the maintenance and upkeep of the cemeteries and the perpetual care and upkeep of all graves and lots in said cemeteries, provided, however, that if in any 1 year such income is more than needed for the purpose of such maintenance, upkeep, and perpetual care, the council may direct that the excess over and above that needed, as above provided, may be used for any other municipal purpose. Which point will you not
could go
might come up against, yeah.
Could go in the judge. How are you using it now, Fred?
All interest in the perpetuity fund is going into the general fund.
So,
Revenue items account.
how much does it amount to going into the general fund?
Around
45,000. It is going into the general fund. Thank you.
Well, now, Fred, no part of it's used for...
The only thing that goes into the perpetuity fund is 1/2 of the sale of the lot. Then the investment. The interest earnings from that goes to the general fund.
But in turn, our costs are appropriated out of the general fund, so the effect is that the earnings from the investment defray the expense. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Hitch, I missed a step in there.
We have created a separate revenue account in order to keep track of the interest that is attributable to the perpetuity fund going into the general fund.
I didn't realize you could earmark funds within the general fund for particular purposes.
Well, they're not earmarked. They're earmarked. They're identified so that we can identify the revenue from certain sources as distinct from other sources.
Everything is earmarked that way.
Not earmarked.
All earmarked. What's the difference between the in-go and the out-go? You've got 45,000 that comes in. How much goes out towards the cemetery? Roughly.
This is the amount budgeted for Mount Hope Cemetery and the Park Division of the Public Works Department.
I realize that, but there's some money coming in from that too, right? And it goes into the general fund. Now, 45,000 is coming into the general fund. How much is budgeted to the cemetery out of the general fund?
I don't know the amount of the budget, but it's the amount that's allocated to that division.
According to the charter, though, you have to know. You must know.
We keep track of it separately. Both the expenditures and the revenue. There's revenue from two sources. One is half the sale of the lot is used for maintenance. Also, the
you were cemetery
perpetuity
at the right time.
The other half is sale of boxes.
You won't get any comeback. I mean, the people that are... The occupants don't complain very much over
Hey,
there.
question vote, Terry.
Where's the where's the money from the lease on the golf course or whatever else is going in on the North 54 acres? Where will that go? General fund?
It wasn't much of it. So restricted by council action.
What's the matter, can't you find it in a streamlined budget? Well, how much is it?
Excuse me, Jack, did you get your answer? All right. Any further
I
questions?
didn't get my answer yet. I'm waiting to find out how much we're putting out of the general fund into the cemetery. In our new speedy budget system, we can't find it.
That'll be changed.
Let's see,
about
summary, return to general fund, net is 11,495 projected.
11,495 return, and we put
45 in.
no, 45 comes, 45.
We take in 45 and pay out 30 something or
The
other.
total revenue is 194,000, less direct expenses of 158,000, less indirect expenses 24,009 for a total return, net return to general fund is 11,495.
And that original amount, total revenue, includes the half the sale price of each plot, doesn't it? I think we better have a report on this. We're expecting too much as they come up with
49,000.
Yeah. So what's the net gain or loss? That's what I'm asking.
11,495 in the black.
Better change that.
Any further question pertaining to cemetery?
If we raise our interest rate or their assumption rate, et cetera, which these people are doing, why, and the income, this figure will increase further into the black.
Provided the
Salaries
remain the same.
Provided we don't give the cemetery a higher level of service. I see. All right.
Anything else on four?
The capital outlay fund is quite a, well, not small.
I'm talking on the side here.
The capital outlay fund, though, Mr. Manager, is there's quite a bit of it goes into Mount Hope, which we don't get back.
And that's not reflected in these operating figures here
It
either.
might be a fair assumption to say we don't know exactly where we are at this instant.
Well, you recall about a year or so ago, we made a rather thorough review of cemetery
I
operations.
sure do.
And we made certain adjustments in lot sales prices and certain of the other services towards the end of getting this thing truly in the black to include the capital investment costs.
Yeah.
And we're pointed that way. I don't think that the lot sales have quite been of the volume to get us completely in the black, including capital outlay yet. So it's a touch and go thing whether we'll ever get truly in the black in the near future.
Okay, well, we'll just have to kind of watch what we approve for capital outlay regarding Mount Hope.
When the federal government runs out of fund space, well then
The assumption is there'll be a marked increase in business.
sure, so then we can raise our rates.
Again.
The Kirby and a true sales program, an all-out effort. New record.
On page 5.
I've been reading a lot of stuff on 111, and we're going to have elections down here at the concourse and so forth. What's happening?
I don't know. I'd like to hear about it. Bill, can you give us a brief outline on this? I got a summary in the newspaper.
Item 111 is simply the hiring of the registrar of voters to do the mechanics of the election, setting up the polling places, sending out the notices, mailing the pamphlets, mailing the sample ballots, handling precinct, the hiring of the polling workers and so forth. This is something we do every year. They do all the mechanics, we hire them and supervise them and do the mechanics.
What I was curious about is the follow-up that I was reading about in the paper. Where are you going?
This is not a new idea. We presented this once before. As a matter of fact, I sent a memorandum to the mayor with regard to this in January of this year. The
point involved here is that since we are what I consider the electronics capital of the West, that if we use these electronic tabulating devices, which we'll have the word on July the 22nd or 23rd on their revised model. Assuming we use this, I think that we ought to showcase the electronics industry here. And my idea was to put it down at a convention facility. Not only to showcase the electronic part of it with closed circuit television will be going up into the registrar of voters office where they are going to be doing the actual tabulation on the electronic machine. This keeps everybody away from there. These will by remote come down and be in the convention facility. Secondly, we hope to have big tote boards similar to a totalizator board, and we will by a data line we will change the figures. As the results come in, we will change the figures opposite either the candidate or the proposition, so it's to have a constant visual presentation.
What's the cost of this thing, Phil?
Well, so far, the local electronics people have been sufficiently intrigued with the idea that they haven't indicated that there would be any great cost. Cubic Corporation, of course, is particularly interested, and they've already, in preliminary talks with them, said that they would turn over one or two of their people to put this together, and they would build these machines for us. The only problem involved is closed circuit television, which we haven't finalized on.
Also, the rent, you'd have to pay rent on the community.
Well, the rent on the community concourse, we would have it for the day before, the day of the convention, the day of the election, and the day after to install, work, and tear out. And it's only something like, they're only charging me $150. It's very nominal. This also provides better facilities for the people who want to observe the election processes. We also intend to put teletypes on the floor so that the news media that use teletypes can file their stories right from the floor.
What do you mean you get a lower rate on the rental of the community concourse than anybody else? Can anybody rent it for $150?
Well, I'm saying, as I remember, that's the charge. I have the charge in my office. It's not an exorbitant amount of money, is what I'm trying to say.
That wasn't what he was thinking about. He was thinking of, suppose somebody else comes in and wants to rent the thing, normal rental rate is, say, maybe $1,000, why...
Oh, no. The rental rate on this is...
Fixed rate?
I thought it's a fixed rate, whatever the fixed rate is, and I thought it was $150. I may be wrong.
I can't see how you can get it $150 because they want $75 for just a little meeting room a day.
Well,
normally it's $500 with a 50 discount to nonprofit corporation.
Well, I'd have to check and see. I've got the exact figure in my office. I don't remember exactly what it is.
It sounds like a good idea if you find out what you're talking about in cost of renting the community concourse is no more than you're talking about. But if the rent turns out to be $1,500,
it's not that much. It's under $1,000.
Didn't you want to rent it for yourself for that night?
I don't know what the procedure is on this. I got a call yesterday in regards to this. Of course, I didn't know anything about it. Of course, you have notified the mayor. I just feel something as important as something pertaining to the election. The council should have been informed anyway. I know this is administrative area, but this is something that made the headlines of the local area section, and also people are interested in coming election.
Well, this is not the first time that this has been in the paper. This is something that's been in the paper several times before.
So maybe I just haven't been able.
It's been discussed. However,
well, whip us up on the whole program. Let us know where it is.
Yeah,
I think it's a good idea. But I'd like to know what it costs because that's just a little bit more than administrative.
Yeah, the newspaper said $1,000. Is that correct?
Sounds like a good buy at $1,000.
That's my estimate. That it costs less than $1,000. We can only do it, obviously, with the cooperation of the electronics industries. If they won't cooperate, then we can't do it, obviously, because we can't buy these switchboards from them. I wouldn't recommend that we buy it.
And I think you're gonna find the rent for 3 days is more than $150. The cleanup would be that much.
I have the figure in my office, I can get it.
Okay, well, we can get back to that. But I was thinking going in. $1,000. Where? On 112, where, well, anything on anything else on 5? On 107 now, Knowledge Street. This has nothing to do with that program that we approved a while back.
Which program?
107. 107 is the continuous, is the continuing work on Nautilus, which is the usual procedure. This is one of the things which the alternative writ of mandate lawsuit would try to stop. We show cause on Thursday why we need not discontinue work on Nautilus.
Would it be proper to put this off a week on account of the suit?
No, would not.
This is authorizing the...
Well, you could. I mean, it's proper to put it off if you wanted. There's no reason to.
Danger the city's...
Weaken your case. Anything else on 5? Page 6. 112, where are these easements and so forth? Don't tell me much. We have a map or something.
Camden County Recreation Station. Camden County Dam.
This running current up to it, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. You don't even look at that. Jack, can you hear down there? Can you hear down there?
What'd you say, Tom?
Can you?
I think you have to talk a little louder. 112 for a power line.
Was he talking?
It's in the vicinity of the new facilities that we're putting in.
Okay.
On 115, what is the effective date of that? When does that start?
August the 6th is the effective date of this ordinance, and the benefit effective date is July 1, 1966. Anybody retiring after August 6th of this year will become eligible on a deferred basis, you might say, as of July 1, 66 for the increased benefit.
We can vote on these, can't we?
Sure, are you speaking whether or not you can vote?
Yeah, well, there's indication like there's absence here, and it looks like they couldn't vote, but they can vote.
As far as I can tell, on an ordinance, there's no occasion why you can't vote.
Okay, good. I can work with that information. See, on 115, 114, what connections are there now? Is there a particular section that has to be?
Well, the only connection is that two councilmen were absent, I guess.
Yeah. Huh?
Side note.
The fact that they were both absent. Oh, I see, yeah, all right. Well, I wish those guys would stick around so we wouldn't have to go through this all the time. Anything else on page 6? On 7, Black, is he asking for a hearing? Requesting information as to disposition of his request for additional taxi cab permits. Apparently he's already asked you these questions at the manager's level.
He has requested additional permits, and he has requested a council hearing on the subject of the existing council policy. We'll
so we should
have a report to the council on this in a week.
1 week? Well, then you want to refer to you? Is a man requesting a hearing on 118 in his communication?
His earlier communication requested a hearing. This is a follow-up letter on his part.
Well, we haven't set a hearing at this point.
No.
His earlier letter, was it sent to the council?
Yes, and in turn, earlier referred to the manager, so this one should be referred to.
How long ago did that happen?
That was about 2 months ago.
Well, it seems to me when a guy asks for a hearing and it's 2 months in the manager's office, something's wrong with it. I mean, I would expect it to come back and have a hearing or deny him, one of the two.
There's been an effort during this time to work out some mutually agreeable interim formula to the existing policy.
To our policy?
Yes. These efforts not culminated yet.
Have you worked anything out yet?
Expect to within a week.
Fine. As soon as you work out something on our policy, let us know first, okay?
Well, knowing how you like to have recommendations from the manager in regard to these things.
Anything else on
Did we refer this from a docket item on the hearing?
I think it was a communication that was earlier referred, Mr. Watt.
Requesting hearing?
The communication was referred to the manager earlier, and,
Who referred it? We referred it, the council referred
as I
it?
recall, yes.
Question is, do we have, we just got into a big hassle on procedures on hearings and the vice squad and a couple of other things. Now, when a person comes in, what is the procedure, Ed, for if he wants to request a hearing before the council on an appeal of the, an administrative appeal? Do we have to have a hearing within a certain period of time, or can we just hold them off?
It depends upon the ordinance of the hearing that's being sought, Jack. Tentative map, one kind, appeals, another kind, vice squad matters, still another kind. A communication on the docket, the guy comes in and he wants you to change a policy or to adopt a new policy, it's totally within your discretion. If you want to hear what he has to say, you refer to the manager, you bring it back on and kind of publicize a public hearing of some sort or other with the matter. But this kind of a thing isn't procedural, at least so far as the ordinance is.
Well, I imagine it would be, because this actually is you might say, somewhat of a constitutional right of the individual to operate a business, and it's a license. It's a quasi-legislative decision that is passed down to be administered by the manager's office. But the only reason why there is an appeal on this, on the card room permit, on the license for cabaret and so on, most of these and all of these things are spelled out so that they are appealable to.
You're right. I'm sorry. Did this thing come up in the way of an appeal from a denial of a cab permit?
That's what I don't know. It came up in the way of a communication asking for a hearing. Now I'm wondering what procedures we have, because we've just been through that baby.
The council adopted a council policy about 3 years ago establishing a formula for the issuance of permits, additional permits. And the formula contemplated that at such time as the population of the city reached 700,000, that the council then once again would consider applications for additional permits. That's what the policy states.
So we've frozen the issuance of cab permits?
Up until the city, my recollection is, when the city reaches a population of 700,000, then you look at the matter of issuing new permits, is my recollection.
That's the way the existing council policy stands. Now, this letter written in by ABC was that he would like to have the council reconsider that policy because we haven't been hitting 700,000 as fast as he might have hoped. So there has been a considerable amount of study put into this thing.
3.5 years ago, we established a limit on permits, right? And we allocated those permits to various firms.
At that time.
What happens when a firm goes under? Who gets those permits?
Well,
they're not like the medallions in New York, are they? That they can be sold between independent operators and so on. I mean, I can't come in and I can't start a taxi cab company in San Diego.
Not under the existing policy, no.
Wondering, legally, can that be upheld?
You can buy a firm out, yeah.
That has happened. There has been some purchase of cabs, from one company to the other, and the permit has gone with the vehicle.
Do we have well, I just wonder whether or not we do on card rooms,
you have
a control but not a limit on it. We just have to have each one reviewed. But I'm wondering if we can establish the controls on any businesses from a person starting a business within the city.
Sure. Public interest.
These are certificates of convenience and necessity. And there's considerations such as total traffic volume, need, regulation problems in terms of...
Will you do me a favor and get me a report on just on the background and the history on just where we stand on cab permits and what it takes for somebody to
council policy itself gives some insight to that.
Yeah, well, some of the other questions that would come up is what happens if how do existing cab companies increase their size of their fleet if they would want to, or do they have to buy out other firms, or what happens when a firm goes defunct and doesn't tell anybody else who gets the allotments and the permits on that, or how many existing permits do we have now that, when we passed the policy, we had a certain amount, do we have more? If so, how?
These are some of the questions that we've been having ourselves and turning over, and will be reflected in this report that I mentioned.
Well, I just brought them up because I might have overlooked one of them, and I just, you might want to report on that.
In my office.
A lot of things because of the shortness of time that we're going to have to get ironed out, everything from the legal to the financial. So we've got an election coming up, and we're going to be telling the people on how it's to be financed and whether or not it's legal or not, and a lot of other things. The only one thing I would add to this, Your Honor, is that I think it's an important addition for the technical decisions that are inherent here that the manager, auditor, and attorney would handle. I think either yourself or the deputy mayor should also sit on that, because I think there should be some legislative representation on this committee to coordinate and work with them, because we're the ones that have been pushing the thing all along, and sometimes the technical discussions might also include and should involve some of the political consideration.
Tom,
I do. Yeah. First of all, Your Honor, I believe this indicates that these three gentlemen, the city manager, auditor, and the city attorney, is working along in this particular project to better inform the general public as to what we are doing, and also to spearhead much of the thinking that the council has in this particular program. But I'm assuming that this is not a group of three men who will form committees to spearhead this. Committees to spearhead this will have to come from citizens organization.
Are you talking about campaign committee?
Yes, this has nothing to do with it, and
Just to provide them with whatever information.
that's correct. And I think this is real
questions.
Before we provide the
Good
people
stuff.
with the information, there's 7 guys, I think, who want some information. And I think the quicker
I
we
agree
get
with
this
John.
group together and get them going, and that's why I say there should be a legislator representative on this to report back to us on the progress, and so that we can, either if it's not going fast enough, see, we've been running pretty much, because of the lack of time, real fast with a lot of people running different directions, and we all have our own ideas too, and I think it would be real good to have Tom serve on it. Could be our, or Frank, I heard you mention, ask Tom there. If Tom would serve on it, and then report back to us so we know what's going on. So if that's all right, then Your Honor, I would move that we modify the recommendation to include the deputy mayor, and then instruct him to go ahead at full speed and keep us pretty well informed on the progress of it or any problems that arise. Because September rolls around real quick. It sure does.
Be here before we know.
Well, if that's in form of motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? All right, so we'll approach it on those bases.
It's going to be a very political issue, so it'd be real good to have a council representative.
I think this indication in your ideas of this night is very good. It to me, reflects good, strong leadership in this direction, and I think it's very essential.
Over to John.
Move. Correction.
We should have grazing, I didn't get kicked.
Where's it? Member Council, we're meeting here this morning with the planning department, the planning department, and in regards to a request by Councilman Helen Cobb pertaining to real estate sign control. There was a report that was given out on May 21st. Move adjourned. I think we're gonna read. Well, why don't we have the planning department restate
what Councilman Cobb had to say, huh?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure how directly we're involved in this. I think we came about it through the we came about it really through the referral from the city attorney, but also a contact with Mrs. Cobb, as I understand it. And the whole matter is the question of some kinds of appropriate regulations that might be applied to real estate signs.
And why don't you let me back up one step? In the La Jolla area, there's been, this is a request from the realtors in La Jolla. There's been some sort of
Is this
gentleman...
by the realty board? Or just a few of the realtors?
Oh, there's an association up there.
Bunch of do-gooders that couldn't handle their own business, so they want us to do.
They've had a gentleman's agreement for some time so that for sale signs go out, simply say that for sale, and don't advertise on these signs. And recently they've had some problems with, a couple of their own members, but mostly persons who do not do business, particularly in the La Jolla area, who I would say in all probability don't even know this gentleman's agreement exists. But what this crew is trying to do is to, whether it's form of district or whatever the legal requirements are, that signs put up by realtors and premises for rent or for sale simply do not advertise. It says for rent or for sale and a contact point, period. One of the things they've been concerned about is it's been some beautiful, almost half billboard size that advertises the name of the realtor and the location, pictures of houses, well, you name it, and it's got some on a for sale sign. Now, this would not apply to, say, an owner wanting to sell his own home or something. Obviously, he can put whatever he wants to in his front yard. But it's simply a control to keep these advertising signs out.
There's one thought that immediately crosses my mind, though. How do you adopt an ordinance that would affect real estate signs in just one part of the city? How can you do that?
Well, this is the question.
You've got to consider the entire city, and maybe the real estate association in the other parts of the city might not be in agreement with this.
Can you imagine a tract of 200 houses in R1 area or something like that, where they even have the model home and so forth, putting up a 2x2 sign says for sale?
I don't think they made any stipulations to sign. What their concern was these big monsters, metal monsters that you stick in the front lawn.
Well, so did they come up with any suggestions?
Yes, they did. They brought the attorney's office.
So all we've got before us now is the best thing anybody can come up with is a sample of the Whittier ordinance.
Well, here's the sample ordinance here. Once you
That's
point
a
out
sample
some
of
of
the Whittier ordinance, but it's stupid. Take a look at the thing. A 2x2 sign. All the advertising has to be done by the owner. You know, like if I list my place, you know, I'm gonna have everybody bugging me. I can't go through a realtor.
Unless we can enforce, in the first place, there's more and more governmental control at all levels of everything we do. And I think most everybody supports this kind of thing, yet each organization wants its own business or profession or something protected by government in some way. They don't want other controls, but they want this kind. Whenever we establish an ordinance, we should either be completely prepared to enforce it and recognize the exposure and cost involved, and to enforce this would be what department would do it, and it would cost a considerable amount of money. Unless there is an awful strong hue and cry for this all over the city, and I sure agree with Alan, we can't establish ordinances for this part of the city and different ones for this. Either it applies to the whole city or not at all. And I frankly, unless there's a clamor for this and there's a real strong push for it, I can't see new laws, new enforcement, and new costs to the city.
Well, I think that, incidentally, there's a note here that Mr. Robinson is on his way from Hoya Town Council. Please hopefully gets here and be here shortly. There's the feeling they had in mind was the kind of permissive legislation which would allow them to establish a special district.
Well, why don't they go to the post office department in La Jolla?
See what that's got to do with it.
Huh? Well, they're exclusive, you see, and I thought maybe...
Did Mr. Robinson know that this meeting was going to be at 8 o'clock this morning?
Well, you don't understand.
We're here.
Well, are there any further questions of the assistant director or anything that we want to answer before the man gets here, and then we can expedite it?
Well, I honestly don't see, at this point, I'm not sold as to why we need one, and I would go a step further than that, I can't see why we should have something unless it's a hue and cry. And I'd ask another question, why don't we eliminate a bunch of those we've got on the books that we don't enforce?
Actually, the man's going to have to sell me on this.
Eliminate one a day.
I think this should be referred to, what is it, isn't there a real estate San Diego County?
Realtor Association?
Mr. DeKirby, there's a very potent La Jolla Realty Association, and this would be a matter for them to handle within their own district and within their own association, because there isn't anyone that belongs to that organization that's not in the real estate business in La Jolla. They've got a beautiful new building, they've got a fine organization, and it's something that could be handled in that area by those people and not by the San Diego City County.
Through self-policing. Give an example. In the automobile industry, a group of us have tried for 15 years to keep everybody closed on Sunday, and there are about 2/3 of us who've been able to police ourselves for some 12 years, and we've kept closed on Sunday. We think it's good. The grocery stores would like to do the same and haven't been quite as successful. And I think this is a problem for associations to work out and not depend upon government to control where they fail.
That's right. It's something like the blue laws in some of the states. God, they're handling a mess.
Well, why don't we move on to our regular docket and shoot through that, and then Mr. Robinson gets here fine, but I mean, I think we're just groping around now.
Before we move on to docket, can I bring up one other subject that's sort of pertinent? The governor has indicated that he's going to have a special hearing on transit, probably the end of next week. And I don't know, maybe, apparently there's nothing in writing. I checked yesterday. There's nothing, action on the council as to the fact that they would like this hearing or not. And through FUD, it's come to our attention that it probably would have some effect to at least keep this thinking going.
I think the
to hold a hearing. I think the council has discussed this and agreed this is what we want to do, but we don't have anything yet. My suggestion this morning is that the council is in agreement with this, that we send a telegram to the governor indicating that this is the course we'd like to have.
We haven't indicated this already?
I thought we
Not to the governor.
Well, I thought we requested the governor to hold the bill up until he's had a chance for a hearing.
Well,
if we want this confirmed, we can...
If this is necessary, I would move that we advise the governor we hardly endorse his suggestion that he hold a hearing.
Why not have John Alicia give him a call and say we want a hearing?
Well, it's been moved by Ivor. I hear a second on the motion.
They must be effective if we're doing this way.
Part of the motion, hearing be in San Diego.
I also think this is quite a compliment to Harry Scheidel that he could schedule a hearing and speak of it during his vacation. Harry,
how about that?
Let's have a hearing while Harry does.
They're going to have to hold up now.
It's been moved in seconds. Moved by Ivor and second by
the council. It's the first time I've been able to trust him out of my sight.
That we notify the governor of the council's position requesting that he does hold a hearing.
in regards to the transit district. All in favor of the
In
motion?
San Diego or elsewhere?
I don't think it's possible to get them down here to San Diego.
Or wherever it might be.
I'm
Well,
hearing here.
The governor announced it yesterday. He said he planned to conduct it himself.
And he said he would suit his schedule to the convenience of the people.
Well, that's very good.
Some
Don.
indicated that he'd consider having it here in San Diego.
Well, this, you want to add that to your motion?
Sure, I
First,
should be held here in San Diego.
What day does he want us to get reservations for his hotel room, you know?
We encourage him to have the hearing here.
yes.
Yeah, we might offer whatever assistance we can and come.
We certainly appreciate the hearing.
What's been moved and second for discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
You want to,
Anything else on that? There's one thing we can clear off before we go on the docket, is ready for discussion, review of chartered legal terminology, and it seems as though we sort of forgotten what this referral was.
I haven't. I'll tell you what it is.
Okay, well, anyway, Marty has the background on it, so inform the whole council on it.
Which number is that?
On A1, ready for discussion. Let's clear that off the docket so we can refer to direction. This was brought up a week ago, and it seems as though half the council have forgotten about this, and half does still remember it. So, bring us up to date on this, Marty.
Nobody remembers
it, me, so half the council. How about that?
This came up on November 24th, 1964, at a discussion of the hotel motel room tax. There was, of course, the legal terminology in that section of the charter which was brought before the voters, and discussion of other such problems with legal terminology was also discussed. It was moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Scheidel. Unanimously carried that the Deputy Mayor schedule a conference at some future date for the purpose of discussing the possibility of establishing a committee to review the charter and recommend corrections in legal terminology.
Okay, the problem, the background of what brought this thing up is that we've had charter review and we've gone completely through the thing as far as what we wanted. However, the charter had in it an imperfection which made the hotel motel tax referendable. Caused a problem. All through the charter there are things of this type. The judge gets this in his hand and says this is clear, unclear, unclean, and all that sort of stuff, you know, and clean up your charter. Now, the Charter Review Committee completely gone through this thing to the best of their ability, but they're not lawyers, they're not attorneys, they're not judges. So what the reason for this suggestion is to get a committee of maybe the Bar Association or somebody of this type to go through this thing with some judges and point out these areas that are vague where it might cause confusion, so that it's very clear and clean cut. And that was the suggestion at the time, so that we wouldn't have things hitting us like Proposition C.
The other idea was that there are law firms that specialize for a fee in reviewing charters and defining in more precisely what the intention really is, and so there is ambiguity and actually conflict within the charter. If you change one section of a charter, it will affect another, and you keep making changes, and pretty soon you have problems. So the other possibility was, and I know the League of Women Voters is pushing strongly for one or the other, is to actually find a law firm and find out a figure what they would charge to make a complete review, and we're talking about maybe $20,000, or a citizens committee of the Bar Association. But I would like to have the attorney's office study this recommendation and come back with a report to us in a couple of weeks of how best to proceed, whether they believe that a citizens committee of attorneys not change the charter, but to clarify the intent and clean up the language or whether it might be best to just hire an expert in this field.
No, this was originally referred to, we haven't heard from attorney on this, in the attorney's office, so, you guys bogged down somewhere, I don't know where, perhaps,
Well, something more important came up, and they had, they're short-handed. Did that inform motion, huh?
Yes.
It's been moved, here a second to that?
Now, this, I'd like to understand this motion a little better. The motion doesn't make it necessary that we hire a legal.
The attorney's office come back with a recommendation. I don't know what other cities do, but when we could actually save ourselves $20,000 in time on one lawsuit trying to defend a charter which a judge says is unclear, ambiguous, and all that.
How about $300,000?
You're going to run into that anyway.
Well,
every time you change it, you raise another problem, but that's the way the
Well,
animal is.
You talk about keeping a charter updated, I mean, you can ignore the thing for a while and get in pretty bad shape, and I think this is a good step, and I would assume we're going to finish off with the charter review recommendations, but that was the basically the intent and the idea of the law this person wanted, but to get it in proper legal language so it's clear to the judges and the attorneys that,
maybe the Bar Association could take on the task of studying it to see whether it really is ambiguous, unclear, and misleading, and so on.
Well, the motion has been made to...
I'm no judge of that.
The motion has been made to refer to the city attorney reports back as to how the terminology can best
let's
be
put a
handled.
deadline on the thing for report, how about a week?
Start with 2 weeks in the motion.
Oh, okay.
Here's second.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded.
The day before I get back to Greg.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
How we can remove this from the conference docket?
Oh, I don't know.
Report's
Waiting
coming.
for department report. Let's not leave it disappear off of here, because
Let's
those
stick
guys
down
bury
to-
them. You know how they operate down
Let's
there.
stick it down to a date certain on their speed.
Yeah. We had a pretty good day the other day. We put 3 on council conference and didn't take any off.
I see some of the people from La Jolla Town Council here.
Mr. Mayor, for Ms. Parks, I get a clarification on this earlier thing on the transit deal. Does the council desire a resolution in that, or a letter over the mayor's signature, or what?
Well, the motion was to notify the governor.
I think a telegram would be better.
From the
Mayor,
mayor.
Yeah, I think
indicate council concur.
the council unanimous and encouraging him.
We're not encouraging him. We think his idea to hold a hearing in San Diego is tremendous.
Pardon?
You know? Hard one to back out of that, isn't it?
Okay, Ken?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a gentleman from La Jolla Town Council now. Earlier this morning, we were discussing in regards to the real estate sign control that we had a conference on. And since you weren't here, we went into other business until you got here. So we had discussion on it up to a point. However, we'd like to hear your views on this.
This is
Hello,
like
Walter.
you heard our new chairman of the board.
Oh, yes.
A little bit awkward. I don't know what discussion you had previously.
Oh, okay. Well, we, Helen, why don't you bring Walter up to date on this?
Basically, we gave some background behind the request for this, some of the problems the realtors had run into. I think the thing that should come out of the attorney's office, I don't know if you've seen it or not, and I haven't seen mine, is a copy of an ordinance, which to me doesn't say what I think we want.
May we join you around the table?
Pull up a chair.
It's a little awkward, I
As
know.
long as you use a straight back chair, it's okay.
What I understood you wanted was a piece of permissive legislation that you might use that would something of that sort.
Anybody in the town council to establish a law?
Well, excuse me, gentlemen. This is the request of the town council, isn't it?
Yes.
All right.
Also, the La Jolla Town Council and the La Jolla Real Estate Brokers Association.
Okay.
Now let me ask one more question. Is this a request only by that group, or is it the request of the entire city of San Diego?
Well, it's the entire community, this would be done by area. We have a petition which has been signed. How many signatures do we have, Wally?
841.
841. These are all the people, just in an afternoon's time, who stated that they were strongly in favor of this idea. The whole principle behind it, as you know, is to endeavor to maintain the character and the beauty and the integrity of the community, and it could be used anywhere in the city of San Diego, of course, in any area where people desire to control for sale signs on there.
Yes, but you know, you have to make certain when you adopt an ordinance by the San Diego City Council, it affects the entire city and not just a single part of the city. And we have a pretty strong San Diego Realty Board, and as one councilman, I have not been contacted by the entire city of San Diego. I have attended meetings in La Jolla at the La Jolla Realty Association, but that's what this council has to be very certain of, that they're not adopting an ordinance that just for a single part of the city.
Well, Mr. Hitch, apologizing for not having knowledge of what the proposed draft is here, it was my thinking, and I think it concurs with the rest, that this is an enabling ordinance by which districts can be established to apply these anti-sign restrictions. And this would be available to La Jolla, it could be available to Point Loma, or any other district that so wishes to impose these restrictions on them, in a manner very similar to the Heights District, which is on the books at the present time.
That's non-controversial, is it?
Well, you have it as an available thing as far as Heights is concerned. I think basically we were asking an available legislation for the control of signs. And this could apply to any portion of the city of San Diego. It's not a blanket rezoning of the entire city, eliminating signs.
The difference is that I think it's very easy to control height if that is something that people, through the enabling legislation, choose to impose upon an area, because when you get a building permit, there's a signal, and you just don't get the building permit if it's above a certain height. So that's a very simple thing to control if it is a law. But when you start controlling signs, this requires a lot of enforcement, proof of violation, and so on. In other words, there's a additional cost to the city, and it would mean nothing if it weren't enforced. So that someone would have to patrol and look and check and see that it is enforced. So we're talking about an additional cost too. I think whenever we put a law in of this type, we have to consider that.
Well, this would be really no different than any other property use ordinance that's on the books at the present time.
Well, the difference is, it is different because this has nothing to do with a building permit or nothing to do with other ways that would automatically flag, here we can avoid a violation. Nobody has to register to determine that they're going to sell their home or needs a permit to sell their home. They just stick a sign out.
But this wouldn't pertain to the owner putting a sign out. This would only pertain to the real estate.
Well, of course,
real estate signs, am I right?
That's correct. Yeah, it wouldn't be an owner's
What are the
own
problems?
sign.
Excuse me. What are the problems you've had? I know there's been a gentleman's agreement for some time on this thing. What have been the problems? The reason you felt it wasn't.
Some of you, I think, were at the opening of the Lawyer Real Estate Broker Association office, and at that time it was brought out that you have 54 offices now with membership of 200 brokers. Now these men are all in the business to try and sell property. That's what their job is for people. They and yet they have a deep feeling for the beauty of the community. So they have voluntarily bound themselves not to put their for sale signs on any house for sale in the La Jolla area. There are two members who individuals that felt that they wanted to put signs up, and regardless of the community, and this is where the problem comes in. When you mention the problem of enforcement, I think that this would not be more difficult to enforce than some of the present laws we have now. For instance, in our FC zone, as you know, the city has put rigid restrictions as to what types of signs you can have on.
Yeah, and there's 200 of them that are illegal. Even the La Jolla Town Council is illegal, and we're supposed to enforce it that everybody is out of step, and I think this is terrible.
Well, it's an ordinance on the books.
I know.
And
maybe we should eliminate that ordinance.
Yeah,
another one.
Well,
It's being reviewed.
I understand your thinking, but in practically all of our zones, we have some type of sign control. In our forest zones throughout the city, you only allow certain signs that you'll allow in our forest zones. In your commercial zones, you have it.
But the owner, you're saying that an owner can do as he pleases. Actually, you're asking for a law because two members of your association want to comply. You're asking for a law to take care of two people. It doesn't cover the owners. It doesn't cover the other 198 members of your profession. But it covers two members who you can't keep in line, so we're supposed to take those two members and put them in a line by putting an ordinance on the books. I'm wondering whether...
Well, that's not exactly true.
I'd like to see another thing too. So you do this by district. I'd like to see you start drawing the line where the district is, like where's La Jolla and where's Pacific Beach. I mean, it's always good for war.
You read the paper this morning.
No, I didn't. I really didn't. But I mean, it's standard operating procedure. You know that.
Yeah.
And this, I think what we're talking about, we don't want to generate a bigger problem than we have. If we've got two guys that are out of line, you know, and I think anything you can do certainly to encourage them. But if I have a strong feeling that it has to be citywide. Number one. Now there are real problems that develop, such as. You've got some guy who's got some raw acreage and he puts in a couple hundred houses. Well, what type of sign are you going to allow? I mean, for sale? I can see that. I mean, they're going to have a billboard probably, and properly so. We're trying to legislate intelligence. You can't do it.
No, I think there's an area here which is not so much the idea of the for sale sign. Obviously, if an owner can put up a for sale sign, that if we're saying it's all right, and some of us don't completely agree, that this is desirable. But these signs that are appearing are not for sale signs, they are advertising billboards. The masses of them, the numbers of them, are simply a matter of commercialism advertising.
Let's say you're advertising real estate.
Many signs have a little tiny for sale sign. You'd have to almost get your glasses on to see it. The rest of it is Joe Smith, Joe Blow, so and so and so and so, and the address and fancy red light. Just nothing but a commercial advertising in a residential zone.
You're talking about real estate.
I'm talking about the real estate offices that are putting up these signs. Under the guise that they're advertising the property for sale.
Well, let me ask you a question. The attorney's office at this point. Could I go in a residential area and put up a real billboard, honest to God, full-size billboard, and over in the corner put this property for sale, the phone number, and then really blast out with something?
I'm sure we'd be out there.
All right, so now the point is made. You're either right or you're wrong. Now, if advertising is not allowed for the big sign, now we come down to something reasonable. When I say reasonable, we might possibly have laws on the books, and it's just a case of enforcement.
I think we have.
We don't allow billboards in an R1 area. What's the definition of a billboard? Let's find out what it is. Maybe you've already got your law.
I think there is such a law whereby a sign of, say, 24 by 36, the maximum size for R1, isn't there?
Yes, there's
advertising
sign
property for
control
sale.
changes.
There is 24 by 36?
The size of some sort.
The size of a maximum sign in the R1 zone, you're permitted one nameplate for each dwelling unit. In addition, you're permitted one unlighted sign with a maximum area of 8 square feet, offering the premises for sale or rent.
2 by 4.
The sign cannot exceed 4 feet in height.
Okay, now Walter, then the example that you gave us is the guy's putting pure commercialism, billboard, the red light on it and so forth. Here's a law. Apparently the man's violating the law, if this is true. If he's violating the law, we could adopt 50,000 of them, and if nobody does anything about it, what good are they? That's the point. You've got the tool to stop that sort of thing right now and pull them down to the 1 by 8 foot sign or the 2 by 4 foot sign.
Would it be any more difficult to enforce that than to enforce the other law we're talking about? You're talking about the expense of enforcement. It seems like
I think you people are the ones that are concerned with it. You ride by and you see an illegal. First, you have to know what the law is. Once you know what the law is, then you go by and you see one and call somebody up. And I don't see how anybody at City Hall can refuse to enforce the law. And if it's a bad law, the best way to get rid of it is to enforce it.
If 8 square feet is too much citywide, then maybe with the concurrence of the city, we should reduce it to 6 square feet. I don't know.
Well, the 8 square feet is a controlling factor, and I recall the discussions that involved it, and it's a compromise found somewhere between the large acreages in which 8 square feet is advertising a for sale sign is rather small, as against the city residence in a residential area where it's exorbitantly big. This is why 8 square feet.
Well,
but you can argue on either side of the fence on that.
Well, I think signs are a relative thing. In short, a 2 foot by 4 foot sign sitting on the side of the Empire State Building, the 50th floor, is like no sign.
That's right.
On the same token, if you put a 2 foot by 4 foot sign on the front of a 3,000 square foot lot, which you've got several of them there on the alleys and so forth, it's a pretty big sign. I think this is also true on the sign control thing, this SC thing. That's a real problem. And there should be some relationship between the size of the sign that's allowed and the size of the thing that you're signing. I don't know what it is, whether it be a certain percentage of the frontage of the lot would govern the width or something of that nature, because I can see where on a small lot or a small building you're going to have too big a sign, not proper perspective or good appearance, and you want it large enough to do the job, but not large enough to blouse up the view. But I do think on this, if you're going to have a sign thing, and on your any sign ordinance, there has to be some relationship to the size of the property involved. In some of those acres, you've got to have a billboard on it.
Andy, would this be of any value? Harry was saying there's a countywide Realtors Association. Some of these are not of the La Jolla area anyway. They're not a part of the gentleman's agreement. I wonder if there would be any benefit to carrying this further to the countywide organization, explaining what you're doing here and your reasons for it, and perhaps extend this gentleman's agreement, which might be
I think it's important, though, that these people know what the law is today, and we know what it is. And sure, if we're going out and use as examples the reason for needing this, and we use as examples a bunch of illegal signs that are illegal right now, that isn't going to do it. Walter mentioned this. And it sounds great. This will get anybody whipped up. A billboard in your front yard. It's against the law. You can't have it. So what do we want? Another law? That isn't the answer. Know what your law is. Straighten out your existing law if there's something wrong with it. But know what it is and enforce it and see what the problems are.
Is there a possibility of some time limit or building or progression of the number of homes built in an area, like say in a new subdivision, for 12 months or 24 months after a new subdivision is formed, they can have signs a certain size, but when the subdivision is 3/4 completed, then the signs have to be reduced or something like that.
I think there is some basis already in the code on that. I don't recall it
We have a
right there.
provision.
In the single-family zones, there are permitted display signs not more than 16 square feet in the area on the same premises advertising a subdivision tract sale. The ordinance provides that all such signs shall be removed prior to the second anniversary of the filing of the recordation of the subdivision.
I thought there was probably something. So,
that's for new tract.
This makes sense and is a good thing. Maybe we need to refine citywide by agreement within the industry our present law.
You've got another thing too.
Your Honor, may I just I'd like to introduce Mr. Dan Turner, our new president of the La Jolla Town Council.
Presidente.
Dan and I are jumping into the middle of the street here.
You've got another thing that would give you control on super signs or large signs. You have to have a building permit of something over $50 in value if you construct it. And a sign is a structure. You have to take a building permit out to put a billboard up. So again, here's another area of law that we have that's on the books that can be utilized. If somebody's putting up a lighted sign, you can bet your bottom dollar there's a building permit on the thing. Or there better be. Let's put it that way. If there's not a building permit,
let Harry finish here.
If there's not a building permit on it, then you spot a sign like that and say, how did it get in, and what's the program, and the city, and then we just go say, well, you've got no building permit, it's an unauthorized use, get it out. And about the time man puts 3 or 4 of those signs up and has to take them out, he's going to get out of the habit.
Mr. Goff.
These signs are the kind you stake in or plug in. There's no building at all. The signs are usually metal, as I recall. And large signs are simply stick in the ground.
Yeah, there's none of these that would come under the building permit classification. I think it's just the daisies of these things coming around. They're advertising signs. They're standard signs that you see whenever you see a for sale sign put out by a real estate office. We think we do not like them in La Jolla, in our area. We think that other areas of the city would also feel the same way. In fact, Point Loma has approached us as to how do we keep the signs out in La Jolla. Unfortunately, they approach us at a time when
we do not like it. I mean, you say we do not like it in La Jolla, but the guy who's got a house who wants to sell it, he kind of thinks it's a pretty good idea, you know?
Well, don't you do it really by self-control? I mean, within your organization. I mean, that's what Point Loma doesn't have. You have a good, strong organization which, except for 2 people, has been able to control it.
Yeah, these people, 2 people, are not members of our association. As a matter of fact, the San Diego Realty Board has honored our gentleman's agreement with the members that are responsible in their organization.
Any further?
I would like to suggest that we take a continuance, because we haven't had a chance to look at the proposed legislation, and we'd like to look it over.
This isn't proposed legislation to begin with. What this is, just so there's no misunderstanding, apparently no one really knew what was wanted, and so we come to a conference and somebody had to gather some papers together, and they found a Whittier's ordinance in Randolph and Xerox. So I would say generally the conversation around here is if we can possibly stay away from more legislation, we want to. If we can possibly, we don't want any type of ordinance that's going to cause a lot of problems, and we don't want to solve some industry's problem of 1 or 2% of their members if it can be done another way. Now, basically, that's where we are here, and if you people can come up with some ideas, and I think it's important for you to review the laws that we do have that would be applicable. In short, go out and look at these offenders, see what they are, and see if there aren't laws on the books. Instead of saying, well, why look through the books let's make it a law to eliminate that sign. You might have 4 or 5 of them right now.
We don't, I'd like to set one thing straight. You're not correcting something that's within the industry. This is not the desire of the real estate people as a profession. This is the desire of the people who live in a community, who want to keep their community the way they felt that they wanted that community when they moved into it. This is the property owners that are requiring this. Those signatures are not real estate people. I mean, we have imposed upon ourselves a restriction.
Yet what you're asking to be done is to have a restriction that will apply to everybody but the property owner. In other words, this applies to everybody else but me.
No, we would just as soon put it on the property owner if we want to. I mean, and the property owner would probably just as soon have it.
Well, that wasn't part of the early discussion.
We thought that the city attorney, we thought there had been a legal opinion that you couldn't do it that way. If it could be done, well, I think everybody'd like to restrict everybody.
There was a suggestion in the attorney's office that this might not be a good idea.
No, this is very true. We couldn't tell a property owner he couldn't put a for sale sign out on his front lawn.
And this was the only reason it was left out, not at the request of the real estate profession.
Well,
I wanted to make that very
nothing
clear.
in the ordinance that says you couldn't, anybody couldn't put a for sale sign on the front
Let me give you a
lawn.
sneaky one now. Let's let Helen. I want you to finish your statement because
No,
we're getting about that time now and trying to round this out.
There would be nothing in the suggested legal preparation that would say no one could put a for, I mean, anybody could put a for sale sign out. I don't think that's the question. When we talked about it earlier with the attorney's office, he raised this question of what an owner can do with his own property, and I never heard any more about it. What the final conclusion was, it's kind of off the top.
Well, let me ask one question here now. Just suppose you eliminate the owner from this provision. Short, he can put his sign up. As soon as you do that, now we start defining owner and what his rights are with his property. I want to sell my house, or I want to sell my building, or whatever it may be, so I put a sign up. I don't want to be bothered with people coming to me, I'm not qualified, and so forth. So I put the sign up that I want these, let them know it's for sale, and I want them to call this number who is a realtor, or Mr. Jones, at such and such. It's my sign, it's up. And believe me, in the selling game, everybody's going to try and get every edge they can to sell their product, and that's what's happened, why these people want to put signs up. Apparently. I would guess that's it. They want to take an edge. And anyone that will do that is going to find a way to beat this law and bring it around. We will be sitting here adjusting and amending a law from now on in, and as fast as we can come up with the answer, they're going to find another way of doing it. We have this in all sorts of advertising. You've got your Better Business Bureau that's fighting this sort of thing all the time. You've got all sorts of legislation, and for every law that you put together, some sharp promoter is going to figure a way of beating it.
I'd like to also point out that we've only talked about for sale signs, but in many parts of the city, possibly not in La Jolla, but in many parts of the city we run into people having to put out for rent signs. They may have 8 units or 4 units and so on, so it'd be difficult to eliminate all signs. Now, if we have tried to eliminate for sale signs, then I can visualize that the Apartment and Rental Owners Association would be in here getting us to not put in the ordinance for rent signs, which would cause the area some difficulty too.
Well, I think that analyzing, again, we haven't studied this draft. We have to recognize that in a multiple residential area, these things are probably difficult to sustain. I don't know. We should look at that particular area very thoroughly. Similarly, in a commercial area where everything is a sale being offered, signs, market having their special on S&W keys and all that, why can't they put out a for sale sign? Okay, so somewhere down the line the ordinance should be drafted to conform to what the community wants. Basically, this is a residential community that is opposed to the for sale sign.
I think what Mr. Scheidel has said about if you permit one person and prohibit the opposite from signing it, you've got loopholes that would be difficult to sustain. This reflects exactly the feeling of most of us on the committee, that we would like to have it across the board that there's no for sale or rent signs in the residential community. And then we can properly administer it. We can police it out there in our own district. It's our backyard. This is the community that we want. This is our own neighborhood that we want to have developed this way. And the Real Estate Association has done a tremendous job out there in doing this on a gentleman's agreement, and I know that they would not just pass the buck to the city if we could have this type of legislation drafted. Properly so, equitable, and uniformly applied to the residential community of La Jolla.
You know, when you say residential, you're referring to all R1s.
Basically, the R1.
Well, we have some areas, though, that R1, and right beside it is R4, and right beside that's R3. Take, for example, a North Park or East San Diego area. Have you got it in La Jolla?
We have it in La Jolla. Again, we can't help but look back to the sign control ordinance that La Jolla has. And I'd say, ask the question, when is the La Jolla Town Council going to comply with a sign ordinance which they recommended themselves with their own organization? We're in a position of being the big bad man who has to go out and say, you 200 people, you're all in violation. And everybody's saying, well, now, it's a good law, just keep it a few more months, don't disturb it. And it's on the books, and they've been in violation for a couple of years, and the moratorium has passed. And we got the hot potato.
Well,
yes.
My name is Robinson. I'm the manager of the town council. The violations that keep being referred to, especially on the town council building side, is not a violation. This was one of the shortcomings of the ordinance when it was first passed, is that there was no grandfather clause. Those signs that were up when the ordinance was passed are still legal, and there's nothing we can do about it. At the present time, we do have before the Planning Commission suggested revisions which would correct this and make everyone comply with the existing ordinance by such and such a date.
If the ordinance is good for new people in La Jolla, why isn't it good for the people who are established?
Because this was one of the defects that was in it when we had it passed, that there was no cutoff date. In other words, those that were in existence then, there is no date by which they have to comply. So this is why we're trying to change it right now. It's not a violation of which you speak. This is a legal sign until the ordinance is changed.
It's a legal sign, but it doesn't comply with the ordinance.
That's right. It's another business that has a sign on the side of its town council office, which is very embarrassing, but nevertheless it is a legal sign.
Let me ask you a question. Helen had a statement.
I think that when we get the SC's revision, this is going to be a conference within itself. To get back to the subject of the conference, I'd like to make the suggestion that the La Jolla Town Council and the Realtor Association in La Jolla get together with the San Diego Realty Board to hash out what's already here, what would be effective, what is desired, what can be used elsewhere, and this kind of thing. I think that we'll all get a better education from this. I know I would. And I think then we can come up with something more realistic.
Well, we're being handled thing. Here's the problem. You solve it, which we're not capable of. We don't really know the problem. The other problem, there's two sides of the thing. There are the real estate people, there are the property owners, and so forth. They should get together, all of those within the industry and the property owners, to see the other side of the fence and come forward with suggested problems. And any question we ask about the size of the sign, you people should have had it all discussed between the real estate association, people and whoever it might be an interesting thing. Get down to the point where we're just discussing the controversial issues. In short, well, we've got 25% that think it should be this big, and we've got 10% who don't think there should be any, so forth, and get it down to that. But really, I think a sample document, first you find out what the problem is, do you need it, and if you need it, then come forward with it. There's one thing that bothers me on this
and I want to ask the attorney a question. When we adopt a law or an ordinance, that's the law of the city, isn't it?
Yes, but there's also the law that says that if the ordinance comes in after, for example, take the example of these signs, if they were up before the ordinance was passed, and the ordinance does not have a built-in amortization period, they have what we call a legal non-conforming status. And actually our own, we have a section in our own code, as you know, on non-conforming structures. And so as long as they don't enlarge upon that structure, whatever it may be, or abandon it, they can continue to have it as is.
Okay, we adopted this law 2 or 3 years ago. It takes 31 days, 40 days to enforce an ordinance, to change the ordinance. The real question runs through my mind, and we have a sign ordinance where all signs had to be not over 5 feet out, and all of the signs had to be taken down in the city of San Diego, I recall that. Why hasn't somebody come forward, and the answer is fairly obvious, in the last 3 years and say, put the grandfather clause in it? We goofed. I think I can tell you why. Because it's a hot potato and somebody out there don't want to face it. And with that, they've ignored it. Am I wrong? In short, we could have put that grandfather clause in 2 or 3 years ago. But apparently somebody's toes maybe didn't have enough support out there. I don't know.
This is dual standards. It's
Well,
all right for the people to hear.
Well, pardon me. I'd like to correct that. In 2 weeks, you'll have this very thing right before you.
Well,
We've already started it. It's already gone.
I'm talking about 3 years, though.
Asking to
Well, let's get back to this here. I think we'll start again.
1957 was the date that the
57 on the SC ordinance? Well, the point I'm making, I think it's very
Well, let's stick to this. It's 9 o'clock now. We have another meeting at 9, so let's...
Well, I'm sticking to the subject. Why adopt laws if we don't know what they're going to do? If we're going to adopt some more laws and they're going to sit there for 10 years as defective pieces of paper and somebody don't come in and do something about it, why do we even talk about it?
Well, there has been a recommendation made by a councilman of the district that the various groups who are interested in the real estate signs get together and also perhaps work with our city attorney's office and our planning department, see what laws does exist in regards to signs. Then from there you would have a package to come back to us, and you would know what exists and what doesn't exist. But right now we're sort of groping in the dark. So
I'd like to see some citywide agreement rather than set one area of the city up with all different laws.
Mr. Hom, in that, I would like to suggest that if these folks want to push that they include some interest in the Apartment and Rental Owners Association, because if you're going to allow for sale, not allow for sale signs, then you have to do something about for rent signs, and the Apartment and Rental Owners Association would be quite a help to you, or at least their wishes should be considered, because they would be a part of any ordinance referring to signs on property.
all right, is there any further comments on this? Well, as far as myself is concerned, before you gentlemen came in, I stated that I would have to be so on this. So if you can come back and convince me we need such a thing out there, we don't have laws covered, I'll give it serious consideration, but I have to be so on it.
Well, we're a little lost. I'm sitting here trying to say, what do we sell? We have a petition there signed by 800 residents. We have ballots here, which were in the paper, just put out to mail into the town council. I don't know, you have the count on this, Josh? No. I'm opposed to for sale signs. We have asked for the enabling ordinance. We're not applying it to any particular property at the present time. I think that Mr. Hicks is right that as far as the apartment house is concerned, this might produce a problem, and it probably would and shouldn't apply. We're talking about the R1 single-family residential areas predominantly. Whether it can be extended to the income groups, even the R2 zones, is a question. Becomes increasing in question when you go to the R3 and the R4 zones. Obviously, out of bounds in the commercial zone. We would like to have the availability so that we could then call for and have you consider under public hearing, properly expressed by the entire community that would be affected, the adoption of the restrictions of the signs in that area. We have areas which, by deed restriction, has already got prohibited signs, but these are spotty.
I happen to live in one of those. That's a good arrangement. But
I was wondering if you investigated this.
You can only
This is property owner.
You can only attach a deed restriction when the property changes hands.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's also difficult enforcement. We think it's well within the scope of the city to adopt it. I believe Mr. Butler now may be able to elaborate even more that we can even, with the endorsement of the community, that the property owner can be prohibited from putting up a real estate sign and be sustained in court. I think there are cases on record for that.
Well, I think, Walter, that what we're saying is that you haven't presented a thought here that's expressed by a number of people. That hasn't been said. What we're saying is you haven't presented us with enough of the tool that we can make a tool out of it. And this would have to come from the industry as well as those that would be affected. Because you know about these things much more than we do.
Yeah, well, I think that what we have done is we've come in this draft prepared in kind of a general way. I mean, like Mr. Shiles said, just to get something on the table. I think that with your permission, we'd like to take this and then come back to you in a month's time, if it pleases you, with a draft of what we think. And to show you the extent of the endorsements that our community has for it.
Well, not just La Jolla Town Council. Let it be the Realtors Association in La Jolla, and have conferences with the County Real Estate Board and with the Apartment House Owners Association, as Alan suggested. And as Harry suggested, review what's already on the books. You may have the basic tool there.
Well, or modify some small modification in our present law might handle what you want.
Beautiful.
I'd like to ask another question. Let's assume now that you're going on a district sort of thing, like the height limitation that you use. Okay, let's talk about the required signatures and shorten the height limitation area. What do we got, 50 or 60% required petition signatures, and then this can be imposed? There are going to have to be considerations for the minimum size of the area. There are going to have to be considerations where the law can't be used just to trap someone, and this happened in La Jolla in the height limitation thing where the people formed a district and then went out and looped and hooked in this one piece of property so they get their 60%. Remember that one? On a high rise just south of the Sharp Hospital. They conformed with the law that we had, but they took advantage of the situation, I think, and these are the sort of things that when you put the law together, you have to kind of, shall we say, run a couple of dry runs and see the problems that you're creating within the law. So if you're going to have a district, let's suppose it was going to be, everything within a radius of a mile of downtown La Jolla. Let's just suppose they could draw a circle. You're going to get 50% of the signatures of the people to say that? I don't think so. You might. But or you're going to take and draw the thing where you got a lot of support and loop it out and keep out those that would be nice so you can still get it. I mean, some of these can get to be real sticky problems.
I think we can get 75% of the single-family residential property.
I think we can get 90%. And that'll be the first time in the history of petitions that that's been done. Because this is really a wide, this is the one thing I know that you can get almost unanimous support in La Jolla.
Until that particular person,
as far as residential.
Until that particular person wants to sell his own home. I think if you took that list and watched it very carefully for the next 3 or 4 weeks, one of these people who signed this list is going to have a sign in front of his house, and well, that applies to everybody else but me. Now I'm going to sell my home now,
possible, except that 90% of the homes are sold, not sold that way in La Jolla. Well, we can certainly do this and go back and come in with something specific.
There's also one more thing. I tried to find out yesterday what the boundaries of La Jolla are. And I'll tell you, that's difficult. There's a big fight developing out there now. They say that some of the people are
I'll tell you where the border line
extending
is.
the boundaries.
You know where the border is? If it's an asset, it will reach out and grab it, and that will be the law. If it's a liability, why we go inside of it.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate that.
Wouldn't you do the same thing? Certainly. Absolutely.
Would you like to extend it down around community concourse?
I'm afraid that La Jolla is going to de-annex San Diego.
The same thing would apply on those conditions where we thought it would be an asset. We'd say great, and when we didn't.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So when the moment of truth comes, you have to draw the line. Well, we have a docket here. Telephone number, your postal phone, all these status. Well, make it okay for campaign signs. You got Milan. Anything on page 1 on the docket? Page 2, all hearings. Page 3. On 10?
Item 10, Mr. Mayor, we intended to have a report which would reach you prior to this being on the docket. We'd like to ask for a week continuance so that we have the opportunity of having a report in advance of taking action on that.
I'm not going to be here, which is all right, but what are you trying to accomplish by this? Get us in the food operation, or get us in the food operation down there, or fix it up so caterers can handle it? There's some reason for this, and I'd like to know what it is.
The latter, suitably equip the facility so that a caterer can properly operate there. This is still in terms of a food holding and distribution point rather than a food preparation service center, but it involves larger refrigerators and sinks and tables.
They've been working at a distinct disadvantage to serving large crowds.
Sure, we've got a lot of money in there now, but we don't have enough to have a legal operation, huh? As far as the health department is concerned?
That would be, these specifications have been collaborated on with the health department to ensure that it would fully comply.
What kind of money are you talking about?
$72,000.
Is it in the budget?
It's within the available funds remaining for the development.
How much remaining funds? Excuse me.
Does this include, in this food handling equipment, are you talking about dishes and glasses and silverware and all that sort of stuff?
No, more in terms of connecting the existing equipment, installing additional tables, putting in a larger refrigerator, basic equipment rather than the portable things.
That's something the caterer can bring in, but his problem is refrigerators and stuff.
Yeah, what we would show in the report is just what is being included here. And
pretty tough to cook a steak in La Mesa and have it still good.
Yeah, but so far the food's been pretty good. Now, how would this expenditure improve what already is happening?
Be better.
That's right.
Well, it would be better, and also it could be served less expensively. It's the big expense of cooking food at another location.
It's ridiculous to have a kitchen that's not functional. I mean, we should either not have the thing or we ought to make it operate. It's like a building that's half built. You got money in it, but you can't get the benefit of it.
I mean, a cooking kitchen.
Yeah. On your question of how much money is left, that also will be included in this report. You get a rundown from time to time on what the balance is.
What was the last balance of the rundown? You must have an idea.
And I don't.
I think we
would show that in the report. We're getting close, I know that. But
we've been getting close for the last 6 months. Every time we put something in the theater or a light dimmer switch and so forth, we always have available funds, and we must have an idea of what's there.
Why don't you find out and let Harry know, and let the rest of the council know.
Let us all know.
Or why don't you notify all the council on this today sometime? Okay?
Yeah. We have to
Well,
know as well as Harry.
Let Harry know, and then we'll make the decision.
Send me a
He's on his
telephone.
vacation.
Send me a telephone, let me know how much it is.
They
Since
give us
you
the video.
didn't have this report that we wanted to get to you, just continue it 1 week. It's not urgent, Mr. Hahn, and the report will be there in advance of a week from now.
All right, if there's no objection, we'll go on to the next, you will notify the council as to the balance.
Yes, sir.
Then a report will come later. All right. Anything on 4?
Yeah, what's the 104, what's the amendment? Extends the agreement 1 year. Extends it 1 year? Right. The same rate.
We only pay if we use him,
No, he gets a flat $600 a month.
whether he does anything or not. Huh?
And I'm gonna stake a hunch we're gonna use the dickens out of him. And he, that's for a certain amount of time, which I can't presently remember, and then anything in excess, he gets an additional amount, which accounts for the total of $10,000, which we don't always use.
Does this accumulate during the year? In other words, suppose he spends no time 1 month, if he spends twice as much months the next month, it comes within his contract.
That's right. So many hours a year?
Yeah.
Is that it? I think, does it accumulate from year to year? No, I don't think so. But he's been, of course, very active. He's been working with us closely on this transit district. Yeah, well, I'm telling you, really, and this guy's going to be well worth his money, and many times over on this transit thing, because we really don't have an authority on operations of systems or companies on our payroll.
Your Honor, I want to go back to item 100. There was quite a bit of discussion last week as to whether it was wise to make an investment of this size without parking, and I just wonder what the city manager thinks about this matter.
I have a report being distributed to you. If I could review that with you briefly. This particular branch replacement has been in the program for some time. Going back to 61, the Safeway stores expressed an interest in purchasing this particular property in conjunction with the relocation of their major Safeway store in that area. They wanted to utilize a parking lot. Our site was not an exceptional site, so there was considerable consideration given at that time to possibilities of alternative sites which were large enough to include at least a certain number of parking spaces. The planning department at the time gave the library commission a report indicating that the present site was pretty squarely in the center of the service area to be served, and at that time the lack of off-street parking was not considered to be a serious drawback, being felt that the on-street frontage on Howard Street, together with the large proposed supermarket lot adjacent to this site, parking needs will be adequately met. Even though there was such a report from planning, and there was an extensive search made in 1962 for a completely different alternative site which would include parking, the property department at that time found in the area 7 or 8 different sites which were large enough, but the price tags attached appeared to the library board to be pretty prohibitive. Pardon me, Ira, you started to ask a question.
Well, on item 4, which you mentioned there, and I probably shouldn't interrupt you in the middle of this, but when we justify not putting parking in because we are next to a supermarket lot, here we are requiring under our C1A code a 3-to-1 parking ratio, and then putting our library next to it and justifying our not having parking because they can park on the supermarket lot. And I think this is terrible. Maybe we should have a new policy and locate all our libraries next to supermarket lots.
In fact, part of the policy or procedure in locating branch libraries is in conjunction with commercial centers. This is not to say that we shouldn't try to get parking on the site wherever we can, but we do like to have libraries in conjunction with commercial
Are
development.
are they in agreement with this? Now, some of them like to have post offices because it brings people who might spend money in a grocery store. Now, maybe they want this, but I think I would like to be consulted if I'd spend a lot of money putting in a parking lot to try to have a city put a library next to it with no parking.
It boils down to this. We would prefer to have a site which could provide for some off-street parking. But we get into this question of just sheer cost of the thing, because this particular area, is pretty thoroughly developed. There aren't any existing vacant sites worth mentioning.
You want to remember that this survey that the property department made was in 1962. This is 3 years later. The property situation could have changed in some way, and you're talking about putting in an expenditure of $132,000, which will probably be there for the next 25 years.
That's very
And
true.
the uptrend in the number of ownerships of automobiles and people using them certainly is worth considering for the next 25 years when you're talking about this kind of money. No private business would think of that expenditure without providing parking.
I don't think we should have dual standards. The city have one set of standards for parking and private enterprise another.
Well, I think we should go one step further. If we can anticipate there is additional parking for the library from this supermarket, then maybe we're requiring too much parking in supermarkets.
Well, on the contrary, the supermarkets buy what they need, and I think it's interesting to note any of them that have gone in, I'm familiar with those on 30th Street, and they go out and bought a laundry. They just keep buying. Sears and Roebuck, for example, the demand for parking, they went out and they bought out that French Original Laundry. Expensive property. For us to drop a library alongside to sop up some of their parking, if they paid a heck of a high price for, we're asking somebody else to go out and pay a high price because we can't afford it, like Safeway. This is all the promise. It's a weird thing.
Now, as far as acquiring a lot adjoining the existing library site to be used for library parking only, the fact is that our existing site is surrounded by Safeway parking lot. Across the alley to the east is Safeway parking lot, and to the south is the Safeway store and parking lot. It's not a question of, in our present site, can we step next door and somehow buy a 25-foot lot, let's say, and add it to our existing site.
You can. What you do is you go to the other side of Safeway's parking lot, talk to Safeway, buy the lot on the other side, swap Safeway that to the one that's adjacent to yours. You know, it's not too complicated.
We have taken some look at that idea.
So then it can be done, can't it?
If Safeway were prevailed upon to do it.
Did anybody talk to them about it?
The location of their building there, I don't think they would probably be too interested to answer your question, and it's not specifically been proposed to them here currently, no, sir.
Well, why don't somebody get the hold of Safeway and see if there's some adjacent property around their lot where we could add to it. You know, we pay to develop and add to it to take off a section for the parking, and you've got it. And it might not be a fantastically high price.
Well, this is all a matter of economics here, as far as I'm concerned. Can the city afford additional ground? If not, I'm for just going ahead with the library, because I can't really always compare the library with the supermarket. Supermarket has a great deal of competition, and they provide what they think can attract the people. But again, too, our library is such, and like the downtown area, we can't possibly provide parking there. And this semi strictly commercial, and if it's too far out of line to purchase additional land, I'm for just going ahead and put the library up. And I think problems will work itself out in regards to parking.
Downtown is C-zone. This is C1A. Now, we impose this C1A on communities, and this is an older community, and we've required the market to comply with C1A, and we don't. we say, well, we don't need to comply because he's got all the parking we need.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Kirby. We're having dual standards. That's the word you use.
The librarian, the library board, our office would much prefer to have a site that did provide parking. Now, in this particular situation, we've got an old, decrepit, poor building for library operations. It's a poor service to that particular community because of the limitations of the building itself, which is structurally unsound, incidentally. If money were no problem, I'm sure we would all be saying, gosh, yes, let's go out and buy a different site, even if it involves condemnation and tearing down existing buildings in order to create a
we don't alter our enforcement of our planning laws by saying, well, you don't have the money available to put your business with C1A parking, so just forget about the parking altogether because we realize that you don't have the money.
We don't. I haven't noticed it. Helen?
I'll interrupt you.
Well, I mean, I've just been breaking my neck to put parking in my own place, and I haven't found a way you can use the neighbor's parking. I want to get in on the act.
Let me ask this. Had any thought been given in the construction of the building, say, the first deck parking?
Well, this particular branch is a bookmobile station location. The lot does slope back towards the alley, and it is two-story on the eastern half of the building design, but the bookmobile is going to operate underneath the building in the back, and it is a relatively small lot, and it doesn't actually provide for the bookmobile, and the bookmobile service facilities underneath the building at the rear of the lot. It doesn't leave anything over for off-street parking on this particular site. We're in a, frankly, have been in a dilemma on this, and we tend to agree with the points that are made here, and yet at the same time are concerned about the total outlay costs involved.
There are 2 points. I don't know whether the bookmobile operation has to remain at that particular branch, which you say is causing you difficulty. Then on top of that, the low bid was 23% above the estimate. So it seems to, and you don't have any parking, it seems to me that it's a very poor business-like operation for the city manager to go ahead and recommend that in spite of.
Well, the alternative might prove to be, Mr. Hitch, that it might be some time because of the funds limitations before it would be feasible to replace this particular branch in a different location. That's the other consideration. However, if the council, the wish of the council is direct us to give this thing one more whirl, in as much as Mr. Hitch says it has been 3 years since this availability of alternative sites was made, I think that this matter should be continued, if you would, for, let's say, 3 weeks to permit the property department adequate time in which to either work, specifically try to work the sort of deal as you mentioned with Safeway.
Sure. Well, either
or find an alternate site.
Safeway wants to buy it.
I don't think they probably do now. But
well, we haven't checked.
Let's find out if they want to buy it. Here, this is located on Park Boulevard, which is pretty good property. And within a couple of blocks, one direction or another, you may be able to, for what you get for 10,000 square feet, buy 20,000 square feet and have the problem solved.
I move that this item be continued 30 days for the property department.
Do that in there.
Yeah, do it in the
Okay.
Okay.
Then we're not violating the Brown Act. We're not.
All right.
Anything else on 4?
It should be ridiculous to go to the National Municipal League and support their policies of
On 5?
eliminating any standards of the federal government.
On 108, we're selling this property, where is it?
This is in the old sewage treatment plant site down Harbor Drive. It's 8/10 of an acre, 34,720 square feet. Price is $2 a foot.
What number is this?
108. 8/10 of an acre, we have no use, we've had it all these years and no use for it.
Well, the new treatment plant, of course, made this surplus to our needs. The proceeds from the sale will go to the sewer capital outlay fund.
Is that where the money came from to buy the property originally?
Well, I don't think sewer fund was established at the time.
Well, the point is, maybe it shouldn't go back to the sewer fund. Sure it does. This is what, utilities property?
It is now, yes, sir.
Yeah, has to go back under the charter and under our bond.
Is that true if the money was not used to purchase it from that fund, Mr. Butler?
It's in the, we're working under the assumption that that particular piece of property belonged to the utility fund. Maybe it didn't, maybe it was just on loan. See what I mean? I see, I'm not even
At
answer
the
the
time
fact
the
that it is.
property was acquired, there was no sewer fund.
I appreciate that, and the sewer didn't own anything, but, just because there was, some city land was sitting there way back from, from Pueblo days, and so you put your sewage plant there, that doesn't mean that the ground belongs to the sewer fund. It's just the point.
In the meantime, there have been sewer revenue bonds issued, and whether or not those indentures
if they're an asset in this, well, let's take a look at it.
I'm not sure if the indentures provide that. I suspect they do.
There's prohibitions against or limitations upon the sale, lease, disposition, or transfer of properties of the sewer system. The point I'm getting at, who said it belonged to the sewer system in the beginning? That's all. Take a look at it.
Okay.
Great.
What are you talking about with
108.
106?
What's that, 106?
Thank you. What does it have to do with the Civil Rights Act?
So what? Civil Rights Act of 1964 requires non-discrimination clauses to be inserted in all public contracts with respect to the issuance of any federal funds or any federal participation.
Oh, and you're simply amending this agreement to include this.
That's right.
Language.
Include this boilerplate jazz here. This
107, what is the purpose of this?
Recently, at Woodside, California, in connection to the construction of the nuclear accelerator, there was a big difficulty about undergrounding the 220,000
I figured that's what it was.
gizmo here, and we're calling to the attention of the AEC, hey, it's okay with us if you put them overground. This added $4 million to the cost of that installation, and the court just ruled that the local ordinance controlled and compelled the undergrounding of the line. Apparently, had the AEC known that it would have been subjected to this, it would have made a difference in their decision to locate this facility.
And so
I was up there during the hearing.
Well, where?
Is this telling the Atomic Energy Commission, don't come to San Diego because we got laws that make it too expensive to be here?
Just the reverse.
Just the reverse.
Far cheaper to come to San Diego.
Yeah,
that's I want to make sure.
We have the ordinance you adopted a couple of months ago on undergrounding utilities expressly exempted overhead facilities of 60,000 volts.
I had dinner with Dr. Seaborg after he attended
Did you?
the hearing down there at Woodside in San Francisco at the Palo after that happened.
That must have been a real mess.
Oh yeah, terrible. And they only went underground for about 3 blocks, but it was a tremendous voltage.
Oh yeah. Wasn't it $4 million?
Yeah, for 3 blocks of underground.
Terrible. What do we do? Line it? We go. You get a short circuit of that voltage, things spark a little bit.
Anything else on the docket?
109, did the council put any amendments into this before introduction? I didn't get a copy of nothing, just as is.
As is from the last time you saw it, we brought in at the last hearing on this matter a suggestion to retain the present conditional use permit for housing development. That suggestion, however, was not accepted, and the matter went through without that change.
Anything else? Okay, motion adjourned.
Second.